name and address, I think is appropriate. No name and address. Say what you want. I have 2 rules. Say your opinion, we'll chat about it, but be polite and courteous to your neighbor, please, because that's the way we roll with Pinecrest. This isn't going the right.
Hello, Terry Maria.
Hello, Terry. Good to see you.
Same here. I live at 13432 Southwest 83rd Avenue.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was there starting organizing the meeting to put Pinecrest together at Pinecrest Elementary. I was one of the people that volunteered at Palmetto Middle School, where I worked for many years as a place to have the meetings in our auditorium. I was there who helped for many times. You've seen me over and over again in this community in the last 35 years, fighting first as part of the Howard Drive Homeowners Association, and then as part of the people that helped incorporate Pinecrest. And because of all those activities, I became very familiar with the workings of the State Commission of Miami-Dade County, because everything we did had to go through them. The law that you cited about density is in regards to unincorporated data. We are incorporated. The reason we have a mayor and a city commission is so that you look out for our common good. And one of the primary reasons for incorporating was to ensure that we did not have development outside of what was already established as a bedroom community. The truth of the matter is, this is pie in the sky for people who want to maximize profit on a piece of property. Now we want to maintain the lifestyle that we fight for tooth and nail here. So, truth be told, this is not a necessary thing to do. This is what you desire to do as a worker. I was there with the first mayor, with the second mayor, who was in this cooperative. When we went downtown and fought tooth and nail when they first put the density plan. Now keep in mind, the density plan was first proposed in the 1980s. Then they clarified it in the 1990s. It went down in the toilet in 2008 during nobody mentioned it for a while. Now it's reared its head again. We've had quiet times because of COVID, and they think, ooh, this is the time to come in and change. This is not the time to come in and change.
Yeah.
This is the time to not only maintain, but fight like with every last ounce of energy in us to make sure that we are the community that we incorporated for, that we are currently now, and adding high density any place in Pinecrest is not what the founders and the maintainers and the fighters for this community have been there and have elected you for. And as far as Miami-Dade County, when we show up, and I show up with 50 people to the city commission, they back down. They don't want to fight Pinecrest.
Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeffrey Granlow. I've been living in Pinecrest for 15 years, born on Miami Beach, a long time ago, I won't tell you when. But anyway, I wrote a recall, Mayor Corradino, because you're acting on yourself and you're not acting in our interest. Also, I think, Mayor Corradino, you think that we're in a dilemma. A dilemma means that you have one or two choices. We have a lot more choices. Does anybody really know that we have $7 million in the bank at Pinecrest? $7 million, they got $7 million, and they want what they're calling diverse housing stock. That means residential properties, diverse housing stock. You see how they made that into a really nice thing? But anyway, what we could do is to coordinate with a high-power legal team to be able to have us be a county, not a city, where we don't have to take orders from Miami-Dade County. We would be our own county, so we don't have any of this.
Let me recap. We want to secede and from the county here, come our own county.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If we are going to have to listen and have a threat from the county of whatever they want us to do, then we need to have our own manifest destiny and not be part of having our home rule taken away from us by the county. Does that make sense? Yes. So you want to be captive under Miami-Dade County?
All right. Is there any attorney in the room? Raise your hand. You have a client. Sure. Take your hand. All right. Thank you, Jake. Nice talking to you. Sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Javier, 5750,
I'll get you next. I'm sorry.
5750 Southwest 88th Street. What's proposed, it's mainly a question what I have. What you're proposing is higher, elevated, higher buildings. Now, my question is the proposal also a higher density, or we remain with the same density that the city allows?
What we're proposing is a density of 25 dwelling units an acre. And so the current density around in the zone that we have now is 12 units an acre. In our comprehensive plan, it suggests, our comprehensive plan has a density that we aspire to at 25 dwelling units an acre. On the back side of that.
It's 7 to 25 is what the comprehensive master
Okay,
plan says.
thank you. Maximum 25, 7 to 25, maximum 25, minimum 7. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. So the reason that we arrived at 25, not only does it say so in the comp plan at the upper side of the range, but it also, according to the Federal Transit Administration, supportive of transit-oriented development, of rapid transit. So this is the number there. And so I figured if somehow we end up, the county, because this, in my opinion, at 5 places with 25 units an acre, very low, very low height, there's a very good chance the county comes back to us and say, like, guys, we were preparing for 3,500 acres at 125 dwelling units an acre. No thanks. I thought, well, if we end up suing them, at least we have a basis to sue them on. We have 25 units an acre, which is transit supportive density. So yeah, and so to get back to the answer of height, the height now is 4 stories in Pinecrest. I'm not married to the 8-story height. In fact, it was a conversation piece to generate a conversation like this. The point of suggesting higher than 4 stories was that I think that gives a bit more design flexibility from the app, a lot more open space on the ground floors. So I don't know if it's 5 stories or 6. I think that limiting it to 4 really gets you the development that we all don't want. That's squat buildings consuming all the land on the ground floor, no open space. So that was the rationale behind that.
So if you add what the city provides or allows now, how many more dwellings would be added if this ordinance passes or what you guys are proposing? How many more units would be allowed to build?
Steve can look up that number.
I can ask 4 questions. So it's approximately 3,800 units, or population increase rather, right, Steve?
3,800.
So it'll be an additional 3,800?
Population.
Is it 3,800 people?
How many units are we talking about?
But what about units? How many more units would we add to
Give us
Pinecrest?
that.
Steve's going to answer that question. I've thought about that number a lot, and right now you have the ability to build a 4-story office building, right? And I looked at the net of the number of people that would be in town, and essentially 1,000 square feet of office building, 1,000 square feet of residential unit, you get an office building generates about 10 people for that 1,000 square feet, and a residential unit generates about 3 people for that 1,000 square feet. So it's certainly less intense. It's less traffic. I mean, it's got other issues with schools and parks and those types of things. But I mean, essentially, it's a wash. I mean, it's no more. I mean, you're replacing X amount of space for an office building with X amount of space from a retail building, and they both have people in it. So if it developed like this, like it's planned to now with all office, you still have, well, you have more people driving to and through town every day anyway. So that's kind of the answer. You know the answer to that.
Remember to ask about it with the other
Let me answer the question. If you're done,
I just want to know how many more units we're
he's
at.
going to answer. How many more units?
This assumes that all of those properties will develop to their maximum planned potential, and if that were to occur, there would be approximately 1,300 additional dwelling units in the village of Pinecrest for an additional population of 3,700 people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, she's going to say one thing and I'll go.
Hello?
For reference sake, when we're talking about density, so there's two different things, density and height, obviously those are the controversial issues. From a density perspective, so you have a point of reference, the reserve, the one, the 4-story, multi-purpose, multi-family residential development that's on 102nd Street off of US1, that has a density of 23 units per acre. So if you're familiar with that and you drive by and take a look at it, you're talking 2 more units would have gone in that space, and that roughly gives you the density feel of that particular development. And like I said, we have developments in Pinecrest currently that go as high as 40-something units per acre. But they're still within a character. Nobody's noticing that. Because it's not necessarily, the density is not necessarily the issue. It's more how it fits in the surrounding area. Because as the mayor explained, commercial development is more intense.
She's answering your question.
She's repeating the presentation, okay? She is repeating you too.
Please let me hear her. You want to talk over there, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
And
Please let the
we heard
lady
the
talk.
presentation already.
Commercial development
That's
in
democracy.
general sense is more intense because it brings traffic in and out for people that are working in the place and also coming to do business in the place. So when you do the traffic counts for that stuff, and I'm addressing specifically the concerns of congestion with new development, just know as a matter of fact that commercial development will always be more intense when it comes to traffic generation than residential, any type of residential development. Okay.
Thank you for answering the question. We're here to answer questions, and that's what we're here. Finally, I get to you.
What I hear is a lot of fear-mongering over what the county can possibly do to us. And you expect the county to say these things. They're going to put up their ugliest scenario towards us. I hear a lot of concern here about design options for developers. The one thing that I don't hear is what you are going to do for us. You do not have a mandate to transform Pinecrest. Your mandate is to defend us. Your mandate is to preserve Pinecrest the way it is. That's why we live here. We don't want these changes. You can embellish Pinecrest the way it is. We can go up to 4 stories, you can put in nice architecture, you can do all these things without going to 5, 6, 8 stories. So you need to stand up for us and do your job. So stop right there, reverse, and do what you're here for, which is fight for us, fight the county, do your job.
I don't know how many of you lived here in 1979. I'm at 500 Southwest 73rd Avenue. And in 1979, there was a meeting over at Gulliver High School. We were members of the community here, and we were members of the council out of Pinecrest. We had a group almost this size. I think it was more because Metro Rail was coming in through our county. And we had a couple guys who were station area design, that's for the Dayland South Station. They were chairmen. They represented 2 commercial property owners and like, well, after hearing the proposal of the county, which was to bring 50 units to the acre all the way to 72nd Avenue, the people weren't too excited about it, kind of like you guys. So what happened is this. The group decided to throw those chairmen out. And unfortunately, they elected me and my neighbor, Al Swain. And what happened was that evening, and I'm disappointed that, unless somebody is here, that there's no county commissioners here to even answer questions. Are they here? No, the county commissioner back then was Claire Austin. Some of you probably remember, some people said she was the county commissioner because she had a white thing in her hair. Anyway, after the county planning guy, the guy from the county, got up and gave his presentation, and he said, this is really great for the community. Claire Osterley, our representative, went like this and said, sit down, Harvey. These people don't want it. And that's what is happening tonight. People do not want to change. They don't want to change to make the county look good, that they got ridership on that machine that still isn't functioning in a financially good way. So, I respect all the work that y'all are doing. I know what you're trying to do, but this is for the community, just as was discussed earlier. And I would appreciate, I think, as these people would, like, leave the height the way it is and don't add more residential units. We don't need them. The county needs them, but we don't need them.
My name is Raul Lewis. I live at 13150 Southwest 75th Avenue. And I thought the presentation was excellent. I thought it was outstanding. As a matter of fact, there are some people that think that this beautiful place, and I love this beautiful place, I adore it. When I walk through the streets, I'm thrilled to be here. I would like to see the US1 corridor reflect the beauty of this place. And right now, I just see a lot of parking lots and spaces, and, commercial stuff that's 30, 40, 50 years old. But I don't see anything nice, I don't see anything new, I don't see anything, developmental. And if you worry about unincorporated Bay, well, that's right across the street. I mean, look what's going on across the street from US1. Look at those giant buildings that they're putting in right now. If you're worried about development, you're getting development. You're getting development right across the street, and those shadows are casting shadows on Pinecrest. It's already here. So my point is, I feel that this is a wonderful plan and an outstanding opportunity to cut the county off. And I would like to hear one more time what you think our legal recourse would be if the county pushes forward. Do we have a leg to stand on or not? No. Well, there you go. Now, you don't want to hear that. I know you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear you're part of Miami-Dade County. I know you don't want to hear that the county has laws and then we have to follow the county's laws. But eventually, if you don't do what's suggested, you're going to get 150 units per acre right in your backyard. Oh, 18,000 votes here is going to convince the county. 18,000 votes. I will listen to the mayor in this time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
That is as someone screamed at me, this is a democracy, right? Let your neighbors speak. We're not stifling anybody's point of view. Why are we scared to let our neighbor have an opinion? Let your neighbor have an opinion. You get your chance to have your opinion, and then we move forward. I'm wondering why it's happening. I know it's controversial, so with that, I can yell.
Thank you. Adrian Vierhouse, my address is 6940 Southwest 96th Street. As my address suggests, I live in the neighborhood in the vicinity of where we have existing higher density residential today along 69th Court and Kendall Drive. And sometimes I think it's hard for folks to visualize what we're talking about, so I appreciate Ms. Galliano, giving us the example of the reserve that's kind of comparable. It's about 23 point something units per acre. Around where I live, there's Dadeland Grove, which is 41 units per acre. I think there's other complexes in the vicinity that are in that range. I can tell you, having lived in that area for the last 15 years, a lot of people are worried about congestion. I really don't see any discernible difference in congestion or traffic where I live versus any other residential street in the village. That's I'm telling you anecdotally my personal experience. I walk my dog, I drive my car. In places like Dadeland Grove, from my personal opinion, I like the idea of the flexibility that a couple of more stories can provide, because those buildings do go up right up to almost the sidewalk. If not, there's parking that's adjacent to the sidewalk. It's not very pretty, not very nice. I think someplace like the Reserve, which is a little more thoughtful, modest, more spread out, if you could bring that up a little bit, have more green space adjacent to the right-of-way, would enhance, I think, like staff has said, the feel that we have in Pinecrest without going crazy, without making this be Coral Gables, 25 stories. I appreciate staff's efforts in making a thoughtful, modest proposal. I echo a bit the prior speaker who said, I think we're being naive if we think that our strip of US1 can just remain as it is. It is prime real estate. It's on the transit main thoroughfare. We're at the end of the Metro Rail. It's all eyes are on us. I think it's naive to expect that people are just going to and the county's just going to let us continue to exist as we are. So I commend the council and staff for this proposal. I would also say, we got to think about what, and respect each other and try to come up with democracy and compromise. And I think the thought that's been put into this, like I said, I appreciate it, and I think there's room here for compromise tonight.
Thank you very much. Very good to meet you.
Priscilla Rivera, 7425 Southwest 100th Street. I've lived at my home, which is the Brampton Palmetto Expressway, since 1987. I can walk to Catherine's Tower in about 5 minutes, if I kind of dodged a lot of cars. I'm going to disaggregate some of this. I don't want to talk about the north end or the south end. I want to talk about the particular area that I have specific concerns with, which is the Catherine's Tower area. When you're talking about 8 stories, those are talking residential primarily. And do you expect those people to have cars?
Yes.
Approximately, maybe 2 cars per unit, at least.
Yeah, I think what we see with, when we start to get to 25 units an acre, we start to see transit ridership go up a lot. You asked me if I want me to go. How do you want me to answer that question?
Honestly.
It's kind of informed by a lot of research. So, go on.
So, is the whole premise of this that people who live on US1 are going to use the Metro Rail and the busway?
Nope.
Is that the premise?
Am I allowed to answer that question?
Honestly.
That's what I'm
Yes, a certain percentage of them will use.
Only if where they're going is in a straight line. So.
Well, you didn't ask me questions, and you won't answer. So, we're like there are no real employment centers in South Dade. And so 150,000 cars drive up US1 every day. Right? But you know where most people work in South Dade? South Miami, Coral. I know that for sure because we've done Coral. Wait, but you're not letting you're not letting me answer my question. So you want me to answer your question?
They don't go up US1.
They do. They go up US1.
My neighborhood.
Right, so that's the people of Pinecrest that are going to your
No,
neighborhood.
it's the people from South Dade.
So I don't want to answer your question.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, so honestly, if people living in those residential units do not work on the line that uses the bus line or the metro line, they're going to use their cars to get with it. And even when they do work, they're still going to use their cars to go other places. And those other places, do you contend that if they intend to use the Palmetto Expressway, they will not come down 98th Street, 73rd Court, and 100th Street? Do you really think that? No. How do you mitigate, how are you thinking of all sorts of plans? How do you think to mitigate that movement down my street, which is already insufferable? It is. So let's have a plan to mitigate. Let's have a plan to mitigate. No, it's not rhetorical.
Do you like the answer?
Yes.
So I'm a person that lives on US1, drive back into the interior of Pinecrest.
So if someone's living there and they want to get on the Palmetto Expressway very quickly, that's how you go.
I'm an architect and a general contractor, and I've experienced development work before, and I've dealt with planning people from different municipalities. I can tell you that some of the information that has been put forward by your planner is not correct. Number one, if you go ahead, you have small lots that you're looking for. Explain to me setbacks to that high point that you are considering to be 8 stories high. What are the setbacks that you're going to have in order for you not to cast shadows and even be unsightly from 72nd Avenue and 98th Street? I'm talking about the site at Captain's Tavern.
Yeah, so we're not at the setback stage yet, that's...
No, but you are at the high stage. So look at this. No. Let me finish. You want me to say what I have to say, and we have heard you what you have to say.
You keep asking questions. You keep asking questions.
No.
When you say, what is this?
I'm not asking a question for you to respond at this point, but he can respond after I am done.
Continue, let me know when I'm not answering the question.
Second, if you want to have those open spaces that you're talking about, you do not need to go more than 4 stories high. The only reason that you're doing it is so that you can increase and make it more palatable to a developer. Area and not look at the parking areas, force the developers to build a garage and to landscape appropriately. And third, have this planner give us the true explanations, because those those lots are not big enough for you to be able to scale up and scale down buildings. I live on the other side. I'm very close to the lady that was here just before. What she was talking about is true. We have, and don't take my word for it, get your public works department to run a tape and see how many cars go through 72nd Avenue. Look at how many cars go through 98th Street. What you are proposing is really going to affect the people that live in Pinecrest. You know what? I'm not living in Pinecrest because I wanted to live, you know, amongst these high-rises. If not, I would have gone to Brickell. Right? So, don't come and tell us that this is for our greater good. We, as a community, are looking to you for our greater good. And that's not what you're offering us. No, I want him to answer my questions now. Now, he can answer my questions now.
What was your first question?
My first question is, how are you going to go ahead and take care of the setbacks on the towers when you're going to be at 8 stories high? How are you going to handle that on a small lot?
Well, obviously, if you have a real small lot, that's not going to be able to accommodate the sort of mixed-use development that's anticipated. So that would require a developer to assemble a number of lots together to create a viable mixed-use development. The setbacks in the current North Pinecrest Business Alternative District are 5 feet from the street, 30 feet from the rear, and 10 feet from the side property lines. That's what's in place today. The exact standard.
Well, what's in place today is only for 4-story high buildings.
This is just a proposal.
And it's a mixed-use building, by the way. And mixed-use does include office and residential, which you do not need to change.
Right.
We're adding residential.
I just wanted to make one more point. The exact land development regulations for implementation of any of these proposed changes has not been drafted. So what we're proposing.
But you are drafting a proposal that includes 8 stories high.
This is a general plan that would recommend mixed-use development with higher heights and densities, that's correct. In keeping with a lot of the general standards that are, or the specific standards that are in place within the North Pinecrest Business Alternative District today. So we would amend the setbacks if necessary, open space, floor area ratios, etc. But those specifics have not been proposed at this point in time.
Well, maybe they need to be looked at and comprehensively look at how it's going to affect the plan, because the plan will be impacted by it.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Gerald Greenberg, 12365 Southwest 64th Avenue. I have a comment and then a question. First of all, I want to thank you all for the presentation tonight. I think it's very comprehensive and very informative, and I, for one, embrace this plan and welcome the changes. I think that, as some of the speakers have said, this corridor along US1 needs improvement. It would benefit from improvement. And I think very significantly, perhaps lost in some of the dramatic vitriol, is the benefits that are offered for multi-generational housing here in Pinecrest. As somebody who's got children, still children in the area, parent in the area, we've seen what happens when people's parents are no longer in a single-family home and have nowhere to go. And they're in the Gables, then they're on the beach, then they're somewhere else. And people's children, of course, are coming back and there's nowhere for them to be. And I also think that the Metro Rail and public transit is a real opportunity. I, in fact, take it, at least when we're in a pandemic, and think it should be encouraged. I also think, just a couple other points on it. No one needs to hear my full thesis on this, but I think that the county, I've experienced it in my professional career with other municipalities, the county has a lot of power. The county can cram things down people's villages' throats, municipalities' throats, and it can be a lot worse. We've seen that with our neighbors to the south. We've seen that with other municipalities as well. And I don't think it's appropriate for Pinecrest to bury its head in the sand and say this is a problem for the rest of this county. Build in the Everglades, build somewhere else. We have an obligation as citizens of this county to do the right thing as well. And we're not talking about massive high-rises, we're talking about modest development. And we need to keep all of that in mind. So, again, thank you all for this.
Thank you very much.
I do have a question, and I don't know if it's a legal question or what, I don't know the answer. Speaking of the multi-generational living, are there things that if this happens, that the village can do to encourage the development of homes that would be, properties or projects that would be accommodating to or welcoming for or reasonably accessible for either younger people or senior living? And is there something the village can do in terms of what? I mean, I realize it's a slippery slope to start getting into who's going to live where. Is there something that can be done in terms of the approval process or the encouragement and the incentivization of such projects?
Yeah, I've seen what's trying to that a little bit already. Yeah, but I think so. If we put together our land development regulations, we can put together incentives for the types of development that we want to see. Larger units, smaller units, different types of things, different price points, those types of things we can incentivize, but we need some flexibility to be able to do that. So I think that happens once we get the concepts down, we know what we want to do generally with heights, densities, geography, then we work on the details of the land development regulations, zoning code, which will encourage those types of things. We'll put them into the planning process that we've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Valeria, and we've been living here at 65th Avenue for the last 7 years. The reason why we moved here is the character of Pinecrest that you guys were talking in the very beginning of your presentation, right? Very low density, beautiful gardens, community that is very peaceful, not much noise, no pollution, peacocks, right? And you guys told me in the very beginning that we all want to strengthen the characteristics and the character of the community, right?
Right.
So I was expecting exactly the opposite of what you presented. I was expecting that you would go and say, you know what? Density is going to be lower because it has more to do. We're going to increase parks. We're going to measure traffic and do something about it. We're going to work around. So there are so many things that we can do to strengthen the characteristics of our community, and we are doing the opposite. And the justification for that is basically there is a county that is threatening us. So they did that to Coral Gables, they did that to Palmetto or somewhere else, I don't know. But either we do something or they will come with all their strengths for us to. I think I'm living in America, and for me, that idea of a government, of a county, coming to a village and imposing a level of change that we don't want is not acceptable. No matter what, so I ask you to please represent the city in a way that you want to, which is preserve our characters, preserve our characteristics, and ask us to fight with you. Let's go together, embrace together the radicalization of what we are, and not what somebody wants to impose on us.
We've been doing a lot of planning with Pinecrest for 26 years, and the character of Pinecrest is always changing. And of course, if you don't do the planning, then the character gets out of work. This is just kind of a picture of the wonderful character that we had in Pinecrest when many of us moved in here. And if we wouldn't have put together our 2012 plan that did all this radical stuff, we might not have those types of things. We may still have this, which many of you did for. Secondly, the county wants to do 125 dwelling units an acre. We are proposing 25. So it's significantly lower density than the county's right. We're fighting for that. And that's not the main reason we're doing it. That's a reason that came about well after we started this process, right? The main reasons we're doing it, as I stated before, we want a diversity housing stock. We want to upgrade the character of the community, of the corridor, to make it fit a little bit more of the character of the interior of Pinecrest. We want to make sure that people have a get entertainment. Those are the primary reasons we want to do this. By the way, another primary reason is we do have a $300 million investment in rapid transit that we paid for with our money in Pinecrest, and we have the obligation to support it to the extent that it fits with our character. And that's why we I'm always warned by the fact that when someone doesn't say what you want, you boo them down. And I think that's telling me a lot about the character that I represent you, because when we do our jobs and we do them right, you take this and you turn it into that. Absolutely. And that's what we do. So, with that, sir, you're free to.
It's on you, right?
It's on you go. And I'll go around and get back to you.
Go right.
Thank you.
Hi, Jared Zementowski, 7600 Southwest 28th Street. I have a few questions and I need clarification on, and I will happily wait for you to answer every single one. Okay. First question is, has the county mayor or any of the commissioners seen this plan, or have you played with this idea of your diabolical plan to cut off what they're pushing?
The county commissioner said, come up with a plan, show it to our planning department, and let's agree on the plan, right? And then no going back from the plan. So set a baseline. So the way that will be reviewed is when we were to submit our information, it gets reviewed by the county and the state, and they'll review it and tell us if it fits into their plans.
Okay. We can't go back on the plan if they agree to it, but what keeps them from going back on it 2 years, 3 years down the road? Let's just assume we get 8-story buildings. Nobody has to boom going somewhere with this. They're not giant Coral Gables monolithic buildings. What are we assuming? First story is retail, stories 2, 3, and 4 parking, because we're going to use up a lot of square footage, and then residential for the other 5, 6, 7, 8 floors. Or are you going to allow sub-grade parking under the Florida Building Code for multi-use, just like downtown Gables, and we're going to get 1-story retail and 7 stories of residential?
I think we take each individual application the way it comes in. What we're focusing on is giving flexibility to the developer to be creative and get us the spaces that we want to see. I mean, our primary function here is beautiful architecture and open space, plazas, public art, outdoor seating. Right. So let me just get back to the 8. Again, the 8 was a placeholder so we could have this discussion. I'm sure that we'll come in less than 8 when we do negotiations. But yeah, it's a flexibility issue.
Okay, 2 more questions, almost done.
No, take your time.
So regarding diabolical plans, right? Captain's Tavern might be historic. It's been there a long time. It's been a part of the county. It's been a part of Pinecrest. Now this brings in third parties and landowners. But back when they wanted to knock down Blackbird Ordinary, huge historic argument about it. Somebody, I want to say from the La Coretta family, just bought a ranch house in the Gables, wanted to knock it down. Coral Gables exploded and said, that's historic. It's a beautiful, perfect example of a ranch house, and those things are dime a dozen games. For all I know, Home Depot is the perfect example of a Home Depot. So, could we possibly leverage the historical argument on certain lots to stop the county diabolical?
That's possible. I think the county is in charge of historic preservation.
County is in charge of historic preservation. They are the ones that establish the designation of properties as historic and maintain the list of historic designated properties.
But yes, I think that's a viable. I mean, if there was obviously historic property involved, there could and should be something done to preserve that property. So,
and just as an FYI, in general sense, the folks from Captain's Tavern have made it very clear they're not moving, they're not selling their property, so they're not interested in this at least anytime soon.
We're not asking anybody to move or asking anybody to sell or any of that stuff. This is a long range plan. This this looks 20, 30, 40 years in the future, and it's the form of development, should these things redevelop, that we would want to see. I mean, I look at the Home Depot, I mean, who doesn't look at Home Depot? It's probably there for a ton of money, and they probably have no interest in getting rid of that thing, and they need an upgrade. But we're not saying it has to go away, we're just saying, if it does, in 25 years, when it builds back, do it to a different form, it's less impactful over there.
Home Depot is my last point. I've got an old house. I'm not very handy. I have two little kids that break everything. I'm there constantly. I can't lose Home Depot. The first meeting I came to was in November, and I commended the council for how you operate everything. But there was a gentleman there who got in a very testy argument with somebody else. And when he stomped out, he was saying, if you don't listen to this, you're going to lose Home Depot. My guess is he either represents or is part of a family that owns the office next to Home Depot. Has there been any conversations with that family on what they're actually planning to do? Because what they plan on doing, and whether it's in this zoning law or not, I mean, that Home Depot affects everybody. I don't think you're going to find a person Pinecrest doesn't go. So I'm very curious to see, is that, if the village can work with that owner on any potential, because, I mean, they're allowed to build whatever you write the code for, they're allowed to build it.
Correct.
You mentioned what's in the code, you can't shoot it down, you can't tell them you can't do it. So how do we lock them in to a community sustainable development on that parcel when they go to do it? And I would love to hear an Ed and Jack.
Well, I have not talked to the sectors that own the Home Depot site, so I have no idea what they plan on doing, what their long-term goals are. Obviously, we're setting code for the future, and we have landowners in Pinecrest, and our landowners in Pinecrest are every bit our residents as well. I mean, they, just like we own our single-family homes, would love to listen to what they want to do, and they understand Pinecrest, and they understand the character of Pinecrest, and hopefully we come up with something that is fitting of the community of Pinecrest. And a lot of the landowners in Pinecrest have been here for generations and care deeply about the community. I don't believe have the desire to do anything that would hurt them. Again, I think giving them the flexibility to be creative would be a benefit to all. So we'd love to listen to whatever they're going to try to accommodate as much as possible. Again, within the envelope that we can go appropriately. Thanks. You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Holly Lewis. I live on the corner of Loveland and 98th Street, southeast corner of Loveland and 98th Street, across from the old Ryder property with the moat. Yeah. And we're lot 1, block 1, Lewis Estates, because my husband's grandfather built in 1945. We're still in the same house with the little heads on. So I've seen what Pinecrest was. We've been here over almost 40 years ourselves before his grandparents. And I can honestly say when I'm watching the houses get built around us, which is non-stop, and it's always, I get approached, and I'm sure most of you do if you're on an acre, are you interested in selling your property? Are you interested in selling your property? And people, those contractors that are buying them are not interested in the ambiance of the neighborhood. They are interested in putting the most square feet that they can get their money out of. Of that same thing with these properties. So you start raising the height, you make it more attractive. Down Carter Kendall Lanes, they held out for a long time. They sold that corner for $13 million. And the guys who owned it said, you know, we just can't pass that up. You pull a property the size of Home Depot that the Specters have or the ones next to it, you give a developer reason to come in because you've raised and increased. They're going to do it, and they're not going to do it because they love Pinecrest.
One of the reasons that Pinecrest exists, and one of the issues that I grapple with all the time is change is constantly happening in Pinecrest. So we didn't necessarily understand what would happen after incorporation with the acre lots and the tiny homes that were on. And those homes disappeared and they redeveloped. And our land development code had not caught up to that yet. And it allows some monstrosities within the neighborhood. And so what we've done, thanks to Councilmember Craft a lot of times, is review our zoning code year after year to make sure that we fit those larger homes that maximize their square footage on property, fit them better into the visual quality of Pinecrest neighborhood. Now, if we just decided we're not going to touch the land development code, we're going to let them do it. By the way, the land development code on US1 is an old county code, right? And the land development code in Pinecrest in the residential neighborhood was an old county code. It's much more sophisticated now. It's got setbacks. It really makes things. It's got landscape, ultra landscape requirements that fit these things in much better than if you were to go somewhere else where they don't have those quality controls. That's the same level of attention that we want to provide the US1 for. And again, we're a quality, not quantity community. We do quality first. We're not interested in 8-story monoliths. We are interested in high-end architecture, open space, housing diversity, great restaurants. And this village has proven time and time again that we can fit a daylight has been there for as long as Pinecrest has been there, and it hasn't ruined Pinecrest. Our property values are higher than they've ever been. We've adapted and fit these things into our environment. That's what we're trying to do here. And this picture is just proof of it. That's the crap that was on our streets in just a few years ago. Our massive results in a little bit better. Now we need to do a better job of it. So thank you. If I have another question.
Yeah, I just want to say, please don't get rid of Home Depot, I'm right there with you. But also, when you point this out, you're pointing out a 1-story to a 1-story. So there's a lot of here when you start adding.
Again, like one of the complicated facets of this is we're tired of them coming to us and drawing the line the half a mile inside of Pinecrest, and we need all the development in the county to be within a half mile of the borders, right? No, I want to push the residential into the corner. Don't even think about invading the single-family line that exists. And that's the trade-off. We might have a little height. All right, go ahead.
But I guess maybe I heard they cannot do it in incorporated. That's why I want clarification. You can.
Currently, that rule is not in place in incorporated cities. The county changed the rule in 2017 to give those densities along every transit corridor in the county. Their goal at the time was when the cities come in to redo their comprehensive plan, we will make them conform to the county's comprehensive plan because the cities and the county's 2 plans have to coordinate. One of the commissioners did follow that path and just said, you know what, we're going to force you to do this and we're going to take control of it. And that's essentially what happened. It's an existential threat, whether you believe it or not. But that's why we're here.
So we need to maybe have some kind of concerted effort to change it back. That plan, you said one commissioner.
No, the whole commissioner voted on it. On the unincorporated areas, it's 125 dwelling units an acre around the stations.
Yeah, I got that. I understand that. But the thing is, you're saying they changed it in 2017.
Yeah.
The commission changed it in 2017.
Yeah, the rest of the county.
Well, maybe some of our records should be working with Palmetto Bay, Colgate, or whatever to try and change that.
The manager asked me, I have a feeling I know the answer to this question. When you get up and speak, tell me what height you like.
We like 4 feet.
Robert Fleming, 7221 21st Street. I'm a lifelong resident, lived here for 53 years. I would like to see progress, and I'd like to see it done properly. How many people have lived here when the Serpentarian was here? Okay. How many people eat at roasters and toasters? Okay, so you don't eat at the Serpentarian anymore. So that's progress. I actually really like roasters and toasters. So we also, if you want to talk about Captain's Tavern, how many people rented stuff from Poe's across the street? Okay, what's there now? A 13-story building.
Is that progress?
It's the granddaughter of the founder of Bear Jones. Been here over 66 years.
Excellent.
We don't want
talk. Let me have my turn. Come up here. Would you like to? You have the mic. Stand in line. Thank you. So, there's a 13-story building across the street. We're looking for 8 stories on our side. If you're going to look at the angle of the shadow, maybe the 13-story building will shadow the 8-story building. Is the 8-story building, or is the 13-story going up there now going to go all the way back into residential? It's only across the street, so I don't really see the problem there. I would like to see 136 done. Like I said, I live not far from there. I don't like what 136 looks like. It looks like a labor pool out front in the parking lot. You know, so I would really like to do something nice there. Look what we've done in Coral Gables. Right, only on the corridor there. Do you think anybody in Coral Gables is complaining? Everybody's got and then you guys can drain around. We got a 1,500 square foot home that tears down. Nobody has a problem building these 8, 10, 12,000 square foot houses. How many people live in the 8, 10, 12, 1,000? You know, I'm sure people have nice houses in Pinecrest and they move here because they want nice stuff. I don't want to see this junk out, and like I said, the Serpentarian was there before. Yeah, progress. Dixie Bell shops, again, progress. We need it done properly. Yes, but we need to see progress.
Thank you.
Hi.
You didn't tell me how tall, but I said 8.
If 8 isn't going to shadow more than what across the street is. So you also have across the street 2 whatever storage buildings that look like crap. These 2 concrete bunkers, you know, on 136. They're allowed to build 15 stories on that side, which is crazy. And look at the crap they allow them to build over there.
This is right. You're having buildings, all buildings are blocking you and crap on the other side of the street.
So let's have something nice on our side that differentiates us.
We will not look like the other side of the street. I guarantee.
I sure hope not.
Not a chance.
Hi, I'm Barbara Meyer. Hi. My address is 11320 Southwest 69th Corner. And, you know, it's really hard to get up here and have a super unpopular opinion, but I guess I do. So, yeah, I feel for you. I also thought your presentation was very thoughtful. I came here basically thinking I was going to completely oppose it, and I didn't end up feeling that way when I heard what you had to say. And that's because I like what you have raised about design flexibility, and what some of the other speakers have said about, for example, one said modest development versus high rise. And I also really would welcome plazas, green space, and outdoor, you know, restaurants where we can sit outdoors and feel like we're in a really beautiful spot. Which I can't think of one place like that on that board. But I did have 3 questions I wanted to ask you. The very first speaker brought up, and you started to address it just here a minute ago, but I'm not sure I completely understood the answer, about the question about the county being able to force unincorporated versus incorporated areas to follow their plan. If you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
The county's got a thing called a home rule chart, and that's only one of a handful of those things in the state, which means they essentially control almost everything in Miami County. And so even when it gets to any of our streets, and you'll see me correct, we can't paint a line on our street or change stop sign without permission of Miami County. Right? They are in charge of that. We generally can't put traffic calming down without permission of Miami County. So they are of the opinion that rapid transit is a countywide regional issue. And I think we would all say that we would love the county to stick to regional issues, not local issues. Because they don't do city stuff very well, right? So what they decided is that even since the 1970s, if they're going to build a rapid transit system, right, they have to have the pegs in place to build a rapid transit system, and the science says you need people. And so they wanted the population next to the transit station. And so since the 70s, they have put laws in place and had on their land use map circles in these places where there's specific population centers. Gayland, the Southland Mall in Cumber Bay. Gayland is a finished product. Southland Mall has been rezoned and re-land use, but its intensity is 250 acres, 250 units an acre, and 17 stories. Right? Homestead is the one further south. It's not even been planned. But 136 years long. So, in 2017, they changed their laws and they said that anything on either side of the corridor, the entire stretch of the corridor, our corridor and every other transit corridor, will be 60 units an acre for the first quarter mile and 36 units an acre for the second quarter mile, a half a mile off the corridor. Again, long-standing county policy is to put the population within a mile of the US1 corridor. Of course, when you look at Pinecrest, that's the state density residential. Now, in the station areas, which we have on 104th Street and 136th Street, the density is 125 units an acre, 16 to 20 something story high. So, that is in place, and the law in Miami-Dade County, all over the county has some transit. So if somebody wanted to today come into the falls and develop 125 unit an acre site at 25 stories, they would get approved, hands down. I don't think that's a problem.
But can they force
Yes,
Pinecrest to do that? That's the part
they
that's
can't
not.
force Pinecrest to do that. It is within their jurisdiction to mandate that we do that. Not only mandate that we do it, the scarier part is that take control of the review and approval process. And so when the latest proposal comes out, it's do something, but we still might be able to take, if you deny them, we still might be able to take the review and approval process away. We're fighting that. But my fear is, what's your tolerance for testing the county? By the way, the counties have a lot of smart people on that kind of commission. They're all pretty progressive, and they want rapid transit because there's no other way to build out of this traffic but rapid transit. So they're looking for those types of things. And look, they have the guts to put it everywhere. What's the next step? You want to know what's your risk tolerance for seriously 25? Sometimes I look at this and say, "You're going to laugh. This is so minimal. It's in 2 spaces. I mean, it's not even." But that's our risk tolerance, and we have to figure it out.
Well, I have to say, everybody, I think you should really think about that trade-off, because that's a pretty good one. My other 2 questions were, well, one somebody else addressed, it does sound like the county still could come back and then do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to pin them down to the point where they wouldn't. I think that we have to always be watching Miami-Dade County, the way they're fighting for ourselves, and that's what I've been doing as president of the League of Cities, is making sure that they don't, that we're pushing back. Because this would have been law if we didn't catch it and stop. It was on its way.
So, I mean, what I'm hearing is very thoughtful leadership, so
thank you.
My other final question is, has there been a traffic study?
No, typically what happens when you're in this level of long-range planning is the state, when we send it to the state for review, they will look at overall traffic and transportation concerns. I think what the state's going to say is the roadway capacity here is the traffic transportation. Now, once it's all gets through, say 25 years from now, the developer comes in or whatever they come in, that's when you do a specific traffic study for that type of development. If there's a law called concurrence, that means you have to have infrastructure in place at the time of development. If the roadway capacity, the water capacity, the sewer capacity ever disappears, right, then essentially the developer mitigates it, which means builds it in, or the development stops. So it's a first in, first come, first served option. Not every developer is guaranteed to build if they can only build to the extent that the capacity doesn't run. So that will be done at the point of every individual development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe Lopez, 7701 Palmetto Court. I don't want to stand up here and give a resume, but I just want to at least show that I kind of know what I'm talking about. I was in private practice for a long time as an attorney. I was a city attorney for the city of Doral, city of Coral Gables, outside council of the League of Cities, represented city of Marathon down in the Keys, worked as the assistant city manager in Miami Beach for a couple of years before going back into private practice. Everything that you have heard about the county was able to do is 100% true. If a former law partner of mine who served as the county attorney for a long time, and may he rest in peace, but he lived in Pinecrest, if he were sitting here right now, he would have told you, you don't stand a chance. If you spend $1 fighting them, then I think you, legally, then I think you are actually leading us in the wrong direction. A couple of years ago, it was about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, Commissioner Jordan at the time tried to put a policy into the county that required every development to have affordable housing. And in order to get developers to do it, she just gave a bonus. Doesn't matter that it was 25 or 35, in every city across, it didn't pass, she didn't get commissioners. Nobody thought it was a legal. So, I don't know if this will work in terms of getting Oliver Gilbert and the rest of the commissioners support to step back. I don't know how we can lock it in. What Jared said, former law school classmate of mine, one of my best friends, the guy who really loves Home Depot. He's right. He's right. There is a danger of getting the county to go back on it. I don't know if we can do it to limit the local, so we actually get some legal rights. All of that is worth discussing. I don't have an opinion on this, short of I see it, like I see some good things. I'd like to know more specifics. If you're going to do height, I think it should be directly correlated to lot size, which addresses that gentleman's comment over there. Which I think you addressed properly as well. So if you have a smaller site, 4. If you have a bigger site, 6. A bigger site, I would absolutely not give developers anything as of right. I would make everything inside these overlays a conditional use, so you can never get sued by saying, you have to give me this because you gave it to that guy. Well, that guy had a much prettier building. Developers will take advantage of every last thing they can find as of right. And now I will admit it afterwards, I am the devil. I don't have any interest in any property here, none at all. I agree with the mayor. I think this is going to take 20, if not 30 years. Assemblages on US1 aren't cheap. Assemblages on businesses on US1 make very good money. I don't think Home Depot, I'll tell you right now, Publix ain't going in. Publix doesn't go to anything. So, to govern the future development so bad things cannot be built, I think it is important to look at this. I don't believe in one size fits all everywhere on this corridor. If you're able to assemble 5 acres, go to 8 stories, put it towards the front, the people behind you aren't even going to know. You get something small, 4 stories, 50 feet away, feels like a 2-story house right next to you. I think that examples of the architectural requirements would be nice to see. Photographs of buildings that would comply, so we can get a better understanding. An articulating facade instead of a square building that would look like a public storage with windows, things like that. The absolute no, I am not. The absolute yes, I am not. Because I do think that these are tight enough. Single family is very close. By the way, Coral Gables maximum height is 16 stories, not 25. And because they share a border with the city of Miami and the transit-oriented developments that the county put on is 22 and 25 and 40-something stories. So don't look too far. We are not going to scare anybody on the county commission. They'll screw their own districts if it means something. And the next step is going to be for greedy developers, which that I do not consider myself or my company. They will start pushing the county to give them as much density on that corridor as possible, and those people are even harder to fight than the county. So with that, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to everyone who came.
Okay, I just want to mention a couple things that he mentioned, and Council Member Kraft, sorry, and asked me to just remind everyone, everything here would be a conditional use. So assuming that council proceeds with any type of regulations that would match a vision plan, like what we talked about, all of that would still be subject to review by the council at public hearings. Another thing I want to stress is right now there are no developments in the pipeline that we're working with. So this is really just trying to set a vision. And again, I ask kindly that when you come up, that you let us know what you think about the height and about the density. I'll remind everyone that the densities we're talking about is comparable to what is at the reserve now at 25 5 units an acre. So I think that the issue really starts becoming more about height if we decide to go with the residential component. And I'd like to hear some feedback on that so we can address that when council workshops on Monday.
Okay, let me address a couple of the comments. I think we agree. The reason that I personally said, hey, let's leave this 8 in there, it was for discussion purposes. And the reason is, because what our last speaker said was, not every one of these districts is the same, right? You can have various different heights of various districts. Some of them don't warrant more than 4. Some of them may have 6. But what we're trying to do here is just this. We're trying to bring the heights down as they get close to the residential. So if you put 2 and 3 stories next to the residential, that's less than what could exist now. And the same thing about US1. You have maximum stories along US1 and those types of things. So with that,
Hey Joe, how are you? Good. Juan Capenato, 8101 Southwest. So Joe, I hate to tell you this, but you're not gonna like to hear this. This that happened here tonight was a self-inflicted wound. You know why? Because we talked about this back when we first attended the second workshop, and we said, Joe, 4 stories doesn't sound bad. You know, everything that you have in the renderings looks fantastic. It really is an attractive plan. I have to agree with the lady that just left that was completely against it until you showed it. But all the renderings you're showing, except the one with the big X, are 4 stories. You know?
Well, let me explain.
But wait. So, you know, and so I mentioned to you, I said, you know, Joe, that looks great. And you guys all a couple of council members were there, and I think, you know, I can't see anything bigger than 4 stories looking like Pinecrest. And we said, you know what, all sounds great too. But what happens when you guys are gone? How do we guarantee that a developer doesn't come in here asking for a variance because now they need 10 stories to make this a viable project? Because costs are going to keep going up, right? Right now we started at 4, you went to 6 to 10. So 5 years from now, it's on the recording on the last one. You guys even discussed the 11 stories.
We put it in the draft plan.
Okay, but it was discussed, and you know, I'll address the misinformation comment later too, because I think it's important that we address it. But the point is that if we are going to move forward with this, because it sounds like you still want to move forward with this when you say we're going to negotiate that, it still sounds like you're still planning on doing that. So I got to tell you, I think you've seen and heard from the comments here tonight that people are okay supporting up to perhaps that 4 stories. We don't want to make sure that the developer is, you know, he's okay and it makes financial sense to them. That's their problem, not ours. But at the end of the day, we know what we want, and we want to make sure that we put in some more moratoriums in place, and things of that nature would include a unanimous vote in the council where, you know, we at least know that the council has to vote. It may have to be a referendum, things of that nature to stop things from changing in the future. So I don't think you're going to get support if you don't have something like that in the Plan 1. And I still think people are open to it, as long as you keep to what you guys originally promised. And so there's also been comments by board members that have said we are putting out misinformation. The misinformation is not misinformation. It's flip-flopping from you guys discussing stuff on these workshops and meetings where you start with 4, go to 6, talk about 10, come back to 8, and then it's all over the map. So,
but that's what a discussion. That's what a discussion is.
I agree with you. I totally.
So let me explain.
But wait, let me finish.
I understand. Go ahead, please.
So my point is, you know, this is self-inflicted. Why? This started when you guys forced the leaf blower issue. And I told you that night after that leaf blower issue was passed, I said, Joe, don't pass this, it's gonna get ugly. It got ugly, okay? Because this is not what we want. We did not elect you guys to change the way we build, we neighborhood. Or whatever agenda things you have on your list because you want to run for another office. I don't know who the heck wants to run for another office in the council. And not you. Well, listen, I know there's other people who think personal attacks. Senate offices here in the state. So I'm telling you, there are people, okay, let's go back.
Let's just keep it on the issues.
Okay, that's fine.
We're not attacking anybody here. This is
Sure.
community.
That's fine, but the residents feel attacked. Joe, let me tell you something. I'm okay. I'm okay. But the problem is you're seeing this turnout because the residents feel attacked. As a matter of fact, you said at the beginning here, you weren't rushing this. You already had it on the agenda for the 8th of March to have the first reading on zoning. And all the other meetings that we had,
Adopting it in
Joe.
February, adopting it by February, by Monday maybe.
Thank you, Maria.
Keep going, don't lose it.
Anyway, my point, I think you can still get support. I told you, look, I think everybody would welcome a facelift to US1. Those renderings of the 4 stories, they look beautiful. They don't look ugly. I don't know who got up there and said those buildings will look horrible. They don't look horrible. It's just not attractive to a developer. That's the bottom line. Some other folks said, well, we'd like to have access to different types of housing in the area. Don't worry, you're going to have that on the other side of US1. There's no plenty of that. We should also be negotiating with the commissioners as to reducing that, because you mentioned to us that in order for them to qualify for that transit money, they needed 25 acres or 25 residents per acre, correct? That was considered high density.
That's supportive of rapid transit, but they need as many as they can get. So
But
that's what
support was enough at 25, right?
That's a mischaracterization of just about everything that's happened this week.
We'll double check. Going back to the last gentleman who spoke, who said, you know, I'm an attorney, and I welcome that feedback. You know, I don't think you guys win if you take this to court and everything. That may be true. But you know what? This was started by that lady right there, Laura McNaught. One person did this, okay? And Maria, this is like Maria, because she's been at this for 20 years, so when you tell me that, you know, we're gonna fight, and it's not worth the fight, that's like, you know, a cheap suit just folding, you know? And you can hire me for that. You know, attorneys don't think we're gonna win, find an attorney that thinks we're gonna win, okay? I'll put the other attorneys in the city. Let's fight, and numbers, you know, strictly numbers, right? You're seeing it here tonight. So, I think that's all I can say. The last thing I want to tell you is, we don't want to have any more of this. You guys are the steering committee for this, and you also are the decision-making body for this. Okay, that has to stop. It should not be that the board is acting as the steering committee for this project or for this vision plan, and it's also the decision-making body at the end of the day. Okay, it shouldn't. So I would nominate to head your steering committee, and perhaps Maria could be co-chair. And then you get some feedback from the neighbors, you get some support, and perhaps we come to a compromise where we make this happen, it looks beautiful, we can all go to dinner and run into each other on US1, and, you know, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, you're gonna answer my question.
I think one of the important issues that you rose up was, we were talking about 4 stories. We'd love to do it within 4 stories, and I think some of this stuff can be done in 4 stories, but it can't be done really well within 4 stories. So
let's bring in the developers, Joe, and let's talk to them about it.
That's exactly what I did.
But listen, that shouldn't be just you, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be just you. It should be the steering committee, mayor and form, and the developers with yourself if you want.
So when I talk to people, I found they needed a little bit of height flexibility to accommodate that. So we mentioned the word compromise, and it sounds like what's the compromise between which
I'm not the one, listen, that brings up another point.
That's not your board, it's not your
Listen,
I'll say six.
Compromise at five. Sorry, it's not going, gentlemen, it's not gonna sell. But anyway, no, I don't wanna make joke of, I don't really wanna make light of that, so I wanna let the lady speak, okay?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Booth. I don't care about the height. I came here to hear the presentation. You guys have a tough job, whether I agree with you or not. I applaud you for your public service. Now, what I want to do just very quickly is ask. Oh, I live in Swan Lake. I live in one of the high-density communities. Before that, I lived in Sutton Place, the other high-density community. Now, oh, that was not very nice.
It's going around.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said get out of here. No, so, in any case, I just want to ask of the audience, have any of you had friends that had to move out because they either couldn't afford their house anymore because they needed to sell it to fund their retirement, and they couldn't find a place to live in our beautiful city? Well, I'm a financial planner. I represent a lot of folks here in town. And sadly, there are a lot of people that are house rich and money poor. So all I'm asking is to think about, as you get older, if you want to stay in this community, there are not many choices. This plan gives us choice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
One more thing, I want to apologize to the folks up there. I realized that was my phone.
Oh,
It's going off on the other one.
This is Councilmember Jim Dunn. I'll also be remiss if I didn't mention former Mayor City Orders if there's also thank you all for coming. Thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Madam Manager and Steve. Steve, could you put up the slide that just shows what the proposal is, the Pinecrest one? Just I want to mention that. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is James McDonald. Lived in Pinecrest on 132nd Street. The one with the red, but that's fine. That'll do. No, that's good, Joseph. That's good. I've lived in this house since 1976. Raised my kids here. I spent 8 years on the council. Thank you for those of you who voted for me. It was an honor to serve on the council. It really was. I'm a lawyer. I still practice law here in town. And I want to thank the mayor and the council and staff for the work they've done on this. As they've said, this is a visioning process. And this is a process that we went through 10 years ago, and now we're going through it again. You've heard the mayor say, there's not one proposal in hand to develop any of this. But what we're doing, what we as a community are doing, is preparing for the future. And when the mayor and the gentleman who appeared here before me spoke about the county coming in and taking over from us, that's a real thing to be concerned about. So what our council is doing is preparing to, first of all, blunt whatever the county may try to do. But also, if you look at what we are talking about here, I mean, I've heard controversy. This is really controversial. I'm looking at, it isn't even all of our village, but we're seeing, what we are looking at is a few parcels along the commercial highway that's been here since time began. And we're talking about making some improvements to meet a growing South Dade, Miami-Dade population. Do you see anything that goes into anywhere where the majority, 99.whatever% of us live? No, not at all. It's all about the commercial corridor that exists. What do you, there's this thing about height limitation. I heard the mayor speak, and I thought the mayor and staff really did a good job explaining the facts. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about skyscrapers. We're not talking about all of the things that I've read in some of these flyers that go around.
I heard a lot of facts tonight that made a lot of sense. Now, I can tell you, we all know as humans, change. We all resist it. Everybody does. I get that. Well, because we're all human. Something that's different, we resist. When I ran for office the first time, I remember walking along 60th Avenue. 60th Avenue, where it took our community, our councils, multiple of them, 10 years to put a sidewalk in on 60th Avenue. Okay? Now you would think putting a sidewalk in is not controversial. Well, it took 10 years. So one day I'm knocking on doors on 60th Avenue, and I knock on a door, and this gentleman came out, and we're talking, and then he pointed, he said, "See that sidewalk over there?" I said, "Yeah, I see it." He said, "I led the opposition to that." And then he said, "I love it." So, everybody, we all fear the unknown, folks. But if you listen, well, okay, I don't. But the thing is, here's the process that you're going through. And I applaud everyone here for being a part of it. The village has had visioning meetings, they've had discussions, you have professional staff working on this, and now here we are at a council town hall where there is community input. But the process is this. After this kind of input, the council's going to go back and discuss it, there'll be meetings. At some point, they're going to take a vote. And when they take a vote, when I was on council, one thing that guided everything I did was to do the right thing. What I thought was the right thing. And I always wanted to listen for input. But at the end of the day, it's not how many people are in this band goal. Because you got to remember, when you're on council, you represent 20,000 other people, and they certainly are here tonight. So everyone's got their opinion. But I would hope tonight, you've heard what the council wants to do, what they're proposing, what they're discussing. And it's not unreasonable, it's not controversial, to say the least. So with that, I would just say thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak.
And I also want to compliment the officers who's in the back, discussing without me seeing it. Anybody else have this that probably would have did it at this point in time? You're on.
Good. So, Carlos Valle, I live in 7495 Southwest 1. I am extremely worried about what I've seen here. First, you are a selected member, right? You're not entitled. And everything you've done here is to basically, you've not listened to understand these people who have been here. You've been spending all the time and listening just to answer back and replying in ways and not understanding the concern that many people here came forward to discuss with you. Second, none of your team have come up with a solution as to what other ways can we fight the county. It feels like you don't work for the county, okay? It doesn't feel like you work for the county. Okay? The third thing is really interesting. You're asking us to, like, hey, be wary of the big wolf called county. No, we ask you to represent us and to find ways to fight that big wolf county. That's your job, not my job. That's why you were selected to this role. Okay? Remember, you were selected. You're here to listen and to understand. You're not here to continue to push that plan that the vast majority here has said, we don't want. It seems like this is your baby. It might be your baby, it's not our baby. Okay? I would appreciate you not doing that. I spent a lot of time listening to what you said to be interrupted as well. The other thing I would tell you, unfortunately, I have plenty of homes in Coral Gables. And I moved here because everybody that said the low density, the spaces, the low traffic, and all these things. I have homes in Coral Gables and moved here because of that. To learn that you have this diabolical plan. Right? The second piece I tell you, I am happy. I represent the second largest REIT in the US. I am happy to tell you what you're saying is flexibility. Flexibility is the biggest lie said here today. The flexibility is the flexibility you give people like me, who work with all the cities in the US, to grab that land and make it as high as I can to make it profitable for me. all about money and profitability and making it sexy for people like me who do this day in and day out in major cities and other places. So please, take a stand, find a way to fight the big wolf, and support what is being said here. We don't want this, and we want to keep it low in height and low in density.
Not really the Pinecrest way. The other thing is that we have thought long and hard about the medical county, and this is the most effective way to do it. Okay? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jean-Michel Kevin. I live on 106 Terrace. We've lived in Pinecrest since 1998. In fact, a couple of months after we arrived from England, all the realtors were telling us to do it here. Because good governance, because of the environment, because of low traffic, because of good schools, all these criteria are still valid for me today. But they are under threat. When I look at this presentation, this is not a call to arms for the defense of the quality of life of Pinecrest. This is a commercial brochure for property development. That's what it says. I've been growing up in this town. I've lived in this town long enough to see what happened to corrugated, what happened to brick, what happened to dead, what is happening now to North Coconut Grove on Bearsford Line. So, irrespective of any sugarcoat, any semantic enhancement and embellishment, we know exactly what we're looking at. We know. We don't need this, we don't want it, nobody asked for it, we don't see the benefits of it. So my question is going to be, before I continue with a couple of other comments, when are we putting this to the vote, to the 600 of Pinecrest? Because if you want a democratic decision, you put it to referendum. Okay? You spoke for an hour. You spoke for an hour. You spoke for an hour. So it's my turn now. Let me tell you another thing. Let me tell you, don't interrupt me. Let me speak, please. Is it because I speak with a foreign accent? So be quiet and let me speak. Okay? Let me speak. This place, I remember when this place, when Carol Jango left this place, there was a proposal to turn this place into the village center. There was an outcry from neighbors and they refused. And that project was immediately shelved forever. Forever. We're asking the same process to be followed. As to what you mentioned about the embellishment, I happen to take Metro Rail every day. Why? Because I live in Europe. And in Europe, if you live in Paris, in London, as I live, you take the Metro. I take it every day. I have nothing against Metro Rail. But when I take the Metro Rail, dead end side, I don't care what the US1 corridor looks like. I drive my car, I park it there, and that's the only thing I'm concerned about. So all this stuff about ridership, about this it's of no interest to us. No interest. We want this community to stay as it is. And one last thing, I would like to talk to any realtor who at the moment is selling $1 million houses. If any of the potential buyers say to them, you know what, I like the house, I like the vegetation, I like everything, but I'm not going to buy Pinecrest because of what I see on US1. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. So really draw different.
Good evening, my name is Ken Fairman. I live at 10901 Southwest 60th Avenue. I was on the committee 10 years ago for the US1 steering when we never packed this auditorium, for sure. We had a rear park, I think we had maybe 2 citizens show up besides the committee. And I mention that because it's more, this building height is an extremely important issue. Density, whether it's mixed-use residential, is extremely important. But there are also other factors that the village needs your input on what you like the look of things. The time we talked about, like, well, let's do like coral rock wall structures and how we want the landscape to be looking. So while you're writing your emails to the council, to the mayor about the major topics, also please think about some of the minor topics, like how you want it to look. Do you want to be able to bike to it easily? Do you want to be able to get a golf cart to it? What kind of features do you want in this property? Those are other issues that are part of this master plan that are maybe not as equally as important, but they're going to be important to how things look in the end. To that point, just a couple issues of mine, because I know you guys are looking for feedback. Landscaping. There's a very common county way of doing these things where you put a little island in between so many spaces and put a tree in it. It needs to be 3 feet around and then plus up the parking lot. I would prefer if we looked at something like less islands, but larger islands, more of an oasis look in some of these properties rather than just something to break up 10 parking stalls. I think it'll add a lot more to the community, which people get some shade, and it's going to look a little bit nicer. Also, connectivity between some of these properties. It would be nice not to have to go into the neighborhoods to go up and down the corridor for shopping. And that's difficult. It means getting some of these developers to agree to do easements and whatnot. But I think that's important to try and maybe keep some of the traffic from the neighborhoods to be the walkers, the bikers, or a driver that doesn't have to go out on US1. So those are a couple of issues there. To the village manager's question, oddly enough, over the past several days, I've been taking great notice of the height of buildings up and down US1. I look at something 8, 10, and more stories, it's colossal to me driving up and down. I can see maybe 6 in an opinion. However, I couldn't see 6 if it's going to be leering over somebody's home. And I think that's something I'm hoping is considered. I know this is a step. I know once this step is done, it's going to go to planning and zoning, and they're going to dig up the details. And I think the devil is really in the details, because if you're going to put a 4, 5, or 6-story building right next to somebody's house, there's no way I can support that. I don't live near there, so it doesn't directly bother me, but I could never support that. I would assume that if something's going to be built on the larger side, even 4 stories, it's going to be far enough away. We're going to have some green space, some buffer space, that it's less noticeable. And I have a question for you on that, and I'll wrap up. As you get this plan done, and it goes to planning and zoning, how much time do we have to look over those details? Because that's going to have a huge effect on, I think, whether a lot of people can support or not support some of these things. And one other thing I forgot about. Back then, 10 years ago, we talked about mixed-use residential. It wasn't a big topic. We didn't think it would ever really come around, but it was something we discussed that time. I'm personally very in favor of that, but again, so as long as it doesn't get, it's really good thing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're not in any necessary hurry to do this. So once we digest this and come to a consensus on the council whether we should make any changes or proceed at all, we'll put it up for a review and go through this same process again until we feel we're comfortable that everybody's had their say and heard it and knows what to do. The other issue is with the height. I think exactly what we're saying is we're reserved. We left the height in there again for the sake of conversation. We would prefer to put the height completely away from the existing residential buildings. If we can push them to the center of properties where they don't cast lights or shadows on them, that's great. And if not, then it's not warranting the height. And so, yeah, everything we've done is to keep the the buildings, whether they're 4 stories or anything greater, away from the existing residential buildings. Go ahead.
To add to what they were saying, also the existing proposal has actually dropped the height of the buildings adjacent to the residential from 4 to 3 stories. So the proposal as it stands right now tiers things, and it actually lowers the impact immediately adjacent to any adjoining residential properties. The other thing also, one of the concepts that we're thinking about when if council proceeds with this vision, then the staff would have to start developing the regulations that would bring this to obviously be able to be implemented. At that point, one of the ideas we were thinking, going back to some of the other comments that were said, is using the total area of a parcel as one of the guiding factors that would determine whether or not you would go to certain heights. So if you have a smaller parcel, you obviously will be able to go as high. That sort of concept, we're still going with that idea. So just wanted to mention that. Somebody said if you have a really small parcel, you don't want to necessarily put something on the pick a really small parcel.
Good to see you.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Haggard. I live at 12645 Southwest 81 Avenue. I have lived in Pinecrest my entire life. I thank everyone and I'm happy that everybody came here because one of the things that I've really been personally probably hurt with, because you are so accessible and you've always answered the call and willing to meet for coffee, is that to be said that there's misinformation out there has really bothered me because the information that we've gotten is directly from your website. You know, so that's really hurt me personally because we haven't made things up. I think maybe you want to direct traffic to your site or direct traffic so that you can spin it in a different, different light, but really that I have to say has hurt me. And then it's not misinformation, it's a ton of missing information. People have questions. They are thirsty for answers. And maybe this is not the best forum for that, and maybe you shouldn't rush this. Because I have personal questions that I still, after speaking with you and attending meetings on and off for the past year, I haven't gotten a satisfactory answer. And what is that? We were told that anything that Pinecrest was doing as far as the vision plan, absolutely flat out, had nothing to do with the county's plans for the R2Z. Okay, and now we find ourselves, fast forward 6 or 8 months, and it has everything to do with the RTZ. You're building a plan, you put it in your plan, you have it in your vision plan to help support Miami-Dade RTZ. So these are things that you can't answer in this forum. I don't want to take up a ton of time, but this is why you have to put the brakes on this to satisfactorily respond to your residents' concerns. We don't understand. First of all, the busway isn't really even built yet. The west side of the highway is going to be impacted tremendously, adding to the density, probably exceeding the density that the county right now demands. And I got to tell you something, it doesn't sit right with me to see and hear a council member and an attorney here and an attorney there say that your sovereignty as a municipality is screwed. It means nothing if the county wants to come in like a giant whale and eat everything. I don't like the idea that we'd be threatened. I think repeatedly one of the good things is that your plan for 4 stories and some of the renditions that you put, some of the discussions that you have are very, very positive. I don't think anybody is against looking for ways of having maybe more choices in restaurants. So I don't think that they're disputing your vision plan. Personally don't like the words like progress and all that only because Serpentarian went out of business, they had to put something there. It wasn't necessarily progress, okay? It was just a change. Okay, futuristic, whatever. Pinecrest is an area that really started to become popular in the 1950s, and it became popular precisely because some of those shopping centers have that mid-century modern feel. And a lot of our original homes, now lost, were that mid-century modern ranch-style home that sat on an acre. We've changed. It's not progress. It's just change. So think carefully. Think carefully when you're looking at that vision plan. You have the support at 4 stories. You have the support at 25 units per acre. You can let the other side of the highway and other areas in the county build. Right now, the rail isn't going to take my son to FIU. It's not going to take me shopping if I decide to go to the Dolphin Mall. I'm going to be in my car. So I don't like the threats from the county. Let them build it. It's going to take them 30 or 40 years to finish that damn thing. They never did the Metro Rail all the way down to Homestead. 40 years later, nobody rides the Metro Rail. It only goes north and south. So now they got a little bit of money and we know that they're going to leave it in an abandoned state. And then we risk having thousands upon hundreds of thousands of empty square retail space, okay? And potentially tens of thousands of units that will not ever be purchased and may not ever be rented.
Maria, that's the misinformation. There's no tens of thousands of units. There's no 60.
But those are the questions that we have.
Okay, I know, but and then as you know, I answer every one of your questions. But when somebody sends an email that says there'll be 60,000 units in Pinecrest, I mean, you're not reading the website.
By the way, that wasn't pulled out of a magic hat. That was pulled from the ordinance proposal from Commissioner Gilbert.
Okay, but that's not Pinecrest.
That's not Pinecrest, but that's the threat. You see, that's the threat that you're saying the county can come in and do.
But he can, Maria. What do you be lying?
No, that's fine.
No, I mean, that's not the primary reason.
But that's why we have questions.
And I answered every one of your questions for as long as you've been asking questions. And I'll say that publicly, but the fact of the matter is that when we said what are the reasons we're doing this, it was one of those things, diversity of housing stuff, the different character in the quarter, restaurants, dining in the restaurants, and entertainment, those types of things. By the way, the county started this RTZ thing after we started our plan. Is it a reason now? Yeah, and it's something we need to work with. Is it the only reason? Absolutely not, because we were going to do this regardless. We were going to think of this process regardless. And so yes, we're taking our time. We'll sit and answer every one of your questions. But then again, the Pinecrest never said anything about 60,000 units. So you might see where I think...
Well, that would be, that's out there.
Well, I know, but
No one said that it
not Pinecrest.
Yeah, but if you go back and you look at everything, no one ever said that it was the village of Pinecrest presenting that.
Yeah, but
never.
I can't
It was
control what
always
people present.
never. And I would like somebody to show that.
But the interesting thing then, and as part of this conversation, is that you're combating the Oliver Gilbert proposal because Pinecrest didn't say 60,000 units. You don't want what Oliver Gilbert said.
No,
So
I'm combating the argument that we need to respond to the county because of the RTZ when we were told our vision plan is our vision plan. You looked at it in 2012, you came up with the 4 stories. Did you get any pushback from that? No. The former council member McDonald even said that you didn't really have any opposition to it. I knew about it, it was fine. Where you're getting the opposition now is because it is a radical and fundamental change to Pinecrest that we will never be able to walk away from. So I ask you as a resident to pause the brakes on it, take this off the agenda from your council meeting on Monday to adopting it in February to your first reading in March, and because of notices, for your final approval in May. Work with the residents, have this type of forum, and get a better understanding of some of the questions they have. Because what is the percentage that the county is expecting in gain in ridership? Do we have to, if it's only 10%, then what are we building for? Then to my point, you're adding to the traffic and you're aggravating the situation. There's a lot of questions. I want to give time to other people.
Maria.
So please put the brakes on it and put it to a referendum to the public.
What I heard tonight is there is no one said, let's compromise. And I'm in for that, let's do it. What I heard tonight is there is no compromise. So what do you guys want to talk about? I mean, there's no compromise. I mean, how many times do you want to do this if you're just going to tell me, I'm sorry, I'm not compromising with you? How many meetings do we sit through where you tell me I'm not compromising with you? And I'm willing to compromise. Ma'am.
You did not respond to my question.
Ma'am.
You did not respond to my question. Please do. Please do.
Go ahead.
Answer my question. Okay?
22nd Street and 78th Avenue. So I'm going to start with a question more for clarification.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of multi-use, the word multi-use.
Mixed use, yes.
That's right, okay. But now I'm confused because the council quietly made changes to division 4.5 commercial districts, allowing properties larger than 1.25 acres to go to single use. I would like Mr. Kraft to, because I know he was a proponent for that, where did that come from? And if it's really going to be single use, how are any of those renderings ever going to come to be, whether it's 4 stories, 5 stories, 6 stories, I could before, but if you've already said it's single use, there will be no retail there. Somebody will turn it into a massive, I guess, apartment building.
Mr. Kraft, do you want to explain that or you want me to? Okay. So I think the genesis of this was years ago, and I don't know what year it was, that a council had said, if you're going to, Steve, you want to hit that? Yeah, somebody's a planner. He's going to answer your question with the right answer.
I don't want to sidetrack everybody. I just
But you asked the question, we'll answer the question.
So several years ago, the village council amended the land development regulations to require properties in the business districts that are 1.25 acres and more to include a minimum of 2 uses in the redevelopment of any property. And the thinking then was that this would stop or help mitigate the impacts of big box retail in Pinecrest, to allow for a variety of different stores and not just large big box type stores. That was the thinking that came from discussions with the village attorney, the planning staff, the village manager, and others. So it was ultimately decided by staff and village council that that really wasn't necessary, that it wasn't effective, it wasn't working, and that there was it would prevent certain properties from redeveloping, and so it was taken out. So how does that impact this proposal here? That was a requirement that any large parcel include a minimum of 2 uses. I don't think that impacts what we're proposing to see.
Well, I thought it did because you're saying that you would have retail, perhaps residential or office spaces up at the top. Now we're concentrating more on residential.
No, there's nothing stopping anybody from having a
There's nothing stopping them, but there's nothing compelling them to mix it up the way you're showing us the record.
When we change our land, development regulations, put an overlay that said mixed use, they would be allowed to do mixed use. That would be the compelling legislation to allow. So it would override what we've got, and they can still conform to this if they didn't want to take, because it's not an overlay, it's a little complicated. They would be the underlying zoning, and they still could do that if they chose not to take advantage of the overlay. The underlying zoning wouldn't go away. It would be available to a developer or applicant if they wanted it, but if they wanted to do more, they would take advantage of the overlay, which would be mixed use density or whatever that would do.
Right, so this doesn't replace necessarily, or it's just an option. But the old zoning that exists today would continue along the entire corridor.
And then the rest is just, I want to come in and I do want to comment. First, let me say, taking a meeting today, but I want to say, I volunteered as a cheerleader in many of the things that you've done for the movement. But I do want to tell you something that was disappointing. During the workshop, the council workshop, at one point, we said, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. 4 floors, 6 floors, not a big deal. We only had 77 actually show up to inspire, and I don't have that number wrong.
80.
Okay, Okay, it was close.
Senator Close, you're
You know
involved.
what, I want you to know, this is a big deal, and it's very disappointing when we hear you approach it that way.
And I understand that, you know, what I was trying to do relative to arguing the height was to use it as, like I said 100 times tonight, a piece of conversation. Because what I learned since our last workshop that we had before the holidays was that providing the height gives the applicants a little bit more flexibility, like I said. I know height is controversial, right? But I wanted to have the conversation because I think it gets us better going. Now, we may end up at 4 stories, we may end up at 6. Why they accept the offer and compromise to 5, but I wanted to be able to have this conversation, not only with our council, but the community, because I really believe a little bit of flexibility would go a long way, and I don't think that the resulting impact from that flexibility with a 4 or 2 floors destroys the character of the community of Pinecrest, particularly when we're living in just a couple of areas, right? So that was the point of that. I meant no disrespect. I was trying to get a point across, and I know it's scary for me, it's scary for the council to be in rooms like this, but I wanted to have the conversation, and that's why I did it.
I really appreciate that. I just want you to know that it's really difficult for all of us to hear you, the council, play it down as like, no, the people, in these dwellings will end up taking the metro rail or the bus. That's not true, but that being said.
But I disrespectfully have to, disrespectful, I was respectfully disrespectful. No, never mind. I'm going to tell you that those things aren't made up. They come out of books. I mean, there's research. I know you don't believe in books and stuff, but I mean, there are plenty of research. If you add 25 units to the acre, you end up increasing ridership by about 30%. And so these are just...
There's a lot of economic factors that go into that.
I know.
Where these people were, even in Zelda.
I understand, but that's kind of what we're basing our opinion, we're trying to base our projections on those types of things that we believe are true and they make sense to the larger world. And so it's true that 25, look, here, let's put it this way, whether it's true or not, the federal government says they rank your projects high when you have more than 25 units, maybe 25 or higher. So it may not be true, it may be the federal government, I know, may be totally full of it, but when they rank your project, if you've got 25 or more units an acre, it can be ranked high. And that's how you get the money into the projects. That's what the county's trying to do, because for decades, they ranked low. And so, and by the way, the density doesn't have to exist, it has to be on the map, right, to rank that way. So that's the rationale for what we're doing. And you don't have to believe it, but it's true.
No, it's just, I logic-wise, these people are going out to take their children to school, they're going to the market, they're not going to be getting on a bus for anything.
But think
And
about
right
this.
now, this one's congested.
But think about this. We're not asking them to get on the bus to go to do everything. I think they get on the rapid transit to go to work. I think that if people actually live in Pinecrest and go to school in Pinecrest, because I don't think the Pinecrest schools are filled with Pinecrest people anymore. So they've ceased to become neighborhood schools a long time ago. Now if you had somebody that lived in Pinecrest, maybe you can take our Pinecrest circulator to school like many of the children do now. At least it's a shorter trip from those areas on US1 into the schools, instead of somebody coming from I know a woman who lives in Key Biscayne, drives all the way in, drops the kid off at a school in Palmetto Bay, and drives up to Coral Gables to go to work. I mean, that's a big long trip. It's shorter when you go from 136th Street to Palmetto. So, I mean, and again, it's not a one size fits all, but
Right, but she doesn't live in Pinecrest. She lives in Pinecrest. Her roads are rough in Pinecrest.
I'd like to say it's the point, but I can't.
Right after school let out time, the traffic is there. The traffic is there in the morning. And now it used to be where it was like just early morning. No, now you get traffic like 10 o'clock, and in the early afternoon, not necessarily when school let out. So you have to understand, if we're adding all this density to that area, what's going to happen to US1? What's going to happen to our community? People that are cutting through to make
our contribution to that is very, very low, because what other communities do, we're not planning to do what other communities, we're not planning 18-story buildings, we're not planning 25-story buildings, we don't have densities of 120 or 25 or 250 units an acre, we're simply saying 25. It's a very modest proposal that we're putting forward. The height will compromise on it, it's a very modest proposal, it will have a less of an impact than what's happening anywhere else. By the way, the impact of a single family, if we continue to build single family homes to house all of the population of Miami-Dade County, it's going to be devastating. This type of development, this type of housing option creates a less impact on traffic, on the environment, on everything, than single family homes either on the Burger King property or out in the Everglades or any of those types of places. So it's not for everybody, and we're not asking to put every new home in this model. We're asking to provide an option. And by the option's good for our older folks and our younger folks. And, you know, these folks, they're going to need it. It's just an option that doesn't exist in Pinecrest. That would be great to have.
Then I'm just going to ask you, Maria asked you, slow down.
We're into a hurry.
You know, we're part of this. This is going to affect us. You might move away tomorrow, but the rest
I'm the mayor. I can't move away. I'm trying to get out of here.
I need to stay here for a while, you know?
I know. All right.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Castellan,
Hello, Rebecca.
6844 Southwest 96th Street. I'm a realtor, and it's been a great 2 years since COVID, I must say. And Pinecrest was kind of like a hidden gem. All of a sudden, we discovered all the way from people from New York, California, and beyond our borders in the United States. And one of the things that they love about Pinecrest is its sense of community. The fact that people can come here, raise their family, live all of their years. And you know, one of the reasons why they choose here is because of the schools. So first and foremost, I'd like to know, considering this plan that you have now with 8 buildings, you said that it would be roughly 3,500 more people or so. I would imagine that minimum 20 of them would be, for example, elementary school children. How does the village of Pinecrest plan on meeting the needs of the additional families?
Well, the interesting thing that is that Pinecrest is not in charge of the schools. Miami-Dade County is in charge of the schools. And so Miami-Dade County will analyze this stuff. My understanding, and Councilman Hochberg can help me maybe, is that our schools are not at capacity right now with local students, and I think we can fit students into our schools, abroad, people drive other places. And so what the county will do as a new development comes across is measure the development for concurrence, and they'll say, okay, you need to have, with this number of units, you need to have X amount of available student stations in the area. And if the student stations don't exist in the feeder pattern in the area, then the developer then necessarily makes a contribution to the county so those student stations can be accommodated. If the developer fails to mitigate the deficiency in student stations and pay their fee so that those student stations can be implemented, the developer cannot proceed. So again, the rule we have in Miami-Dade County is of concurrency, which means you have to have infrastructure in at the time of development. So they will charge a fee. If the developer fails to mitigate, the development will not be approved.
I mean, I would think that that's a discussion that needs to be added to the plan, because I can tell you as a realtor, if people who are considering moving to this area no longer feel that the schools are servicing students as they are or better, then obviously that would have an adverse impact on the property values.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the reasons that we have such high property values are the schools, but think about this, each and every one of our schools has redeveloped in the last couple of years to keep with the character of the interior Pinecrest. Bethon, Gulliver, all the public schools, all those schools are basically brand new. So they invested in the area, and they understand, they're ready to accommodate whatever comes about. So yes, that's a very important topic.
Yeah, I'm just asking that you please add it.
Yes.
And another question that I have is, you mentioned that this plan is all up and down the US1 corridor.
It is not. It is in these locations that you see on the map. So what we have is one at 136th Street, another one at 104th. These areas exist already in the blue, and there's one up in the north of 88th Street by the transit station Green, which is contemplated to be expanded. So this does not operate under this order. It's only in 3 new locations, so it's very limited.
Let me rephrase my question. So the county wants to do this up and down the.
Yeah, the county, if they have their way, would say that everything within 1/2 mile of the US1 corridor would be upzoned.
So then my question is, because again, as a realtor, I know they are extremely low density areas that are in more desirable locations for redevelopment, say by Grand Avenue and US1, which is zoned 1 story, which is one of the reasons why you have some of the lowest housing costs in there, because we can get, nobody has been able to successfully get a variance, have a 2-story home, and the developer can go in there and build a $2, $3, $4 million home, as you know, they can use Pinecrest. Why is it that we have to take this burden and not have communities that really could significantly benefit and even look more beautiful? And why should we even want to take the burden rather than have other places in the county that are even more desirable locations, supposedly for people that take the metro rate?
Well, the county rule is that along every transit corridors, this is the law in unincorporated areas. I believe there's six transit corridors. And so, if there are municipalities in those transit corridors, then they would be asking those municipalities to take on this burden should they go forward with that. So sometimes, I mean, I'm not quite sure exactly what you're looking at, but if it's not around the transit corridor, then it would be subject to this.
I mean, you go up and down US1, there's single-family homes very close to Brickell. There's a lot of other properties that make sense to incorporate into this zoning that the county wants to do instead of us having it in our backyard.
Right. And so those on the unincorporated areas, that's the law.
This is City of Miami.
Yeah, so that's not part of this. The city of Miami with Pinecrest is fighting this against the county.
And that's my point. Why isn't the county going after areas that make more sense instead of coming to our backyard? Right, so focus on that first, do that, because there's still a lot of space in the US1 corridor that makes even more sense because it's closer to where most of the jobs are downtown, so we'll continue to say, you know, people taking the metro rail rather than coming to us when, you know, we want to stay a low density community.
Gosh, we're working with the county to mitigate as much as possible. Let me answer your school question. I think you want to read the answer to the school question?
So in 25 years, 25% of those new residents would be school age, and about 60% of our kids attend public school. That comes out to be about 480 students among 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school, which essentially provides no impact to the schools. It would just make our schools more Pinecresty, less room for transfers in from other feeder patterns. That's good for traditional neighborhood schools. That's with maximum redevelopment, which is not likely to happen, because what you see, even in the case where we have existing densities that are higher, like we have zoning right now that allows 50, when they redevelop those properties, they didn't take advantage of that. So it's likely that some of these things will never come to fruition, even though we might have them in the business plan.
I just have 2 more questions that I want to give other people a chance. One is, what is going to make the county stop from saying we want more land or we want higher density? It would give this up. And also, I want to express a sentiment that I don't think it's fair for those homeowners that are closest to these areas that you plan on rezoning, because when they purchased those properties, they bought into a 4-story. And it was not, you know, some of these quote-unquote ugly malls that we have, you know, let a developer pick it up with the current zoning that we have and have something beautiful come out of it. You know, I can tell you as a realtor, you give them an arm, you give them a hand, and they will take your arm. And this is not one of those things where you can just be a little bit pregnant and we'll just do it here, and it's not a big deal.
We have a zoning code right now. We've had some of these codes in place for however long, and no redevelopment. By the way, it's not unusual zoning or land use code. So all we're saying is we're going to upgrade our zoning and land use code. Every city has it. Doesn't mean, the developer may not even ask more, but Pinecrest was not exactly known as developer friendly. Right? Tell me about the Lexus dealership. I think Lexus, one of the most profitable Lexus dealerships in the entire universe, you say, so it's a big spot. But so they built almost like a clock tower on the top of their building. It was a couple feet over the height limit, right? This is number one, probably our biggest employer, biggest tax generator, and nationally renowned retailer of automobiles, and we denied their variance for like 2 feet of light over the height limit. And the fact is, this corner is going to be redeveloped. We want to work with this whole code where we're denying applicants 2 feet. We refresh our code all the time. Our attitude is coming to Pinecrest, we work within our code, we did not, and we do it all the time. We're not going to do it. We don't roll over people. That's what a place is so good. That's Jerry.
I just want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. As a realtor, I can tell you one of the things that you mentioned was the whole diversity planning. It's going to go at market value. Because I think a lot of people say that they can't afford their home bridge and then they can't afford to live in Pinecrest anymore because it's too expensive. It's a fallacy that just because they do these diverse developments that you're going to be able to stay in Pinecrest. Because what's going to dictate value is going to be market value. Unless we have a government subsidized building, prices will be determined by the buyers themselves.
And I know that was probably a giant mistake. And never asked my children to say anything in public comment, but here we go. Hit me with both barrels.
Michael Gilbert, 5800 Southwest 108th Street. I've been standing here so long, Joe, I've actually forgotten about it. I want to start off with Ken's comments, take the easy stuff first. And I think Ken's hit the nail right on the head. We need to, as we redevelop this corridor, connect these shopping centers so that we're not going out to the highway to drive 10 feet to go back into the next spot. We need to increase their accessibility. And most importantly, as Ken pointed out, if we're going to increase density, then we need to be exceptionally aware of the residential neighborhood. And Ken had said something about 3 stories, but I think that, quite frankly, what you ought to do is if you're coming up against residential, that first round should be residential height, and then stepping up from there. Now, I did actually read the proposal, all 47 pages of it.
That's one of us.
And, what I noticed was, even in the small charrettes you had, that everyone was opposed to increased density, mixed use, and residential on this. There was not one single matrix in which the things that are being discussed here were popular, approved, or sought after by the people in the charrettes. That expression of not wanting this, I think, has been expanded on by the people here. You've only heard 3 to 5 people come up here in favor of what's happening. The fact of the matter is, the people in Pinecrest don't want this. They don't want to change. And you've used the term "we" several times during this conversation, and the "we" that you're supposed to be representing is not the "we" that wants this. So I don't know if this is a council or a Joe or whatever, but it's not a residential "we." So we shouldn't be compromising with ourselves, that's the other key term you've used. Why would we compromise with our elected officials over something that they're supposed to be protecting for us that we don't want? The photographs you've shown of the malls that have been torn down and redone show that when developers want to redevelop, they want to make an attractive destination for their clientele. So these malls are being redeveloped and they are being beautified under the existing code. So that is not a reason to change the code. The only reason to change the code that I've heard tonight, and I've heard it from several lawyers, I've heard it from you, who's president of the League of Cities, and I trust Mitch and our city attorneys to give us good advice, and that is the potential of the county coming in and imposing a much denser, much higher height type of development plan on us. And I find it personally offensive that a county can do that to a sovereign municipality. Control over our zoning was one of the main motivators of incorporation. It had to do with the redevelopment of this piece of property. But if that is the case, we have to take, we got city attorneys who've got no dog in the fight, we've got you, we've got everybody else telling us they can do that, then the approach should be to change the density, rezone these areas to the minimum requirement, to use the word we used earlier today, that would blunt any attempt by the county to come in and take away. Anything more than that is not what's wanted here. And when I ran for office back in 2008, I'd say, conversations with my wife, I'd say, I want this, I think this, and she looked at me, she goes, Mike, what you want and what you think doesn't matter. As an elected official, you represent the people in the community, and it's what they want that you have to advocate. None of this is wanted, so we may have to have it, but to the extent that we have to have it in order to avoid a much worse situation, we should develop it in the minimum fashion possible. And last but not least, just to give an idea of the impact of 25 units an acre, Steve, you said about 3,800 people. I rounded that off to 4,000 because it's an easier number to work with. That is a 23% increase in population in the village of Pinecrest. That's a big.
I actually said I should have let you leave.
Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Lauren Naughton. I want to address a couple of things. As a person that has spent many, many hours looking at the videos, watching the workshops, I personally find it offensive to be told that I am spreading this information. I've been called a liar. I've been called corrupt. I've been told that I am taking advantage of elderly residents in this community. I do want to make everyone understand that when I have questions, I email and I text our village manager. They're wonderful, they answer me. I do the same thing with Mr. Olmsted. So part of the workshop that we just watched last week, there was a lot of discussion of going 10 plus stories. There was a lot of discussion of increasing density to 35. I understand that this is now a draft proposal. You guys have made it more conservative to have this discussion. But I do think it's important to put out there that that was discussed for a great deal of the workshop. The other point I want to add is, yes, there has been so much discussion about we're not in a rush, and that also bothers me because we know that on Monday, you're scheduled to discuss this to, finalize this draft. And then we know that in February, you're scheduled to vote on this. So there's no plan to really listen to us, and I think that that's a problem.
I have a 3-hour and 11-minute listening session.
Well, let me focus on that.
And we're complaining about it. But you're saying that I'm not listening, and I'm standing here listening for 3 hours. So, again, this is kind of an issue. You also knew very well, if you watched the videotape, that at the end of the session, the council said, let's take these things out and put these things in the draft plan. And the 10 plus stories wasn't on the draft plan. So
the 10 stories was the discussion from Adam's Tavern. But no, that is not true. That is not true.
You also said you had to that everybody had to hold the line at the end of that session, Joe.
And buckle down for pressure. Buckle down for pressure. Now, Mr. Mayor.
We're sitting here and we're getting.
But Mr. I'm not yelling. I'm not yelling. I'm just short, and I don't really know if this is for giving out my voice or not. Let me finish my statement. So, for me personally, and I can't speak for everybody else, if there was really an intent to take into account the results of these type of workshops and the different inspires, why are you already scheduled to workshop this on Monday?
Because we listened and pressure our.
No, you're not listening.
So typically what we do in a public hearing or meeting is we would take public comment and then we would reconvene and we talk about that and we figure out where to go. And so this has been 3 hours of public comments, a relatively important topic for everybody involved. So I don't think we should let it wait for a week or 2 weeks. Let the council get together and figure out what to do. If the council decides, I don't think we should go forward, that's what the council decides. If the council decides, I think we should go forward, here's, I think, the changes that we should make, the council will decide that.
But going to that point, so another discussion, okay, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, another discussion from the January council meeting is, because my public comment was that people feel they're not being listened to.
Again.
And several people on the council said that we are listening, we just don't agree. So I would like your commitment tonight, I would like your commitment that you are not going to have this workshop on Monday, that you're going to rediscuss this internally and figure out.
We are going to have a workshop on Monday, and we'll decide what to do then, because the council can only meet at a workshop. We can't speak to one another outside of the public meeting.
I understand that, but the residents aren't even allowed to be in the workshop.
I didn't say to listen to you, but I don't think they would agree with you.
You're not paying for all. You're a public servant. I voted for you every single time you ran for office. You lived in my district.
All the time. I don't think you're watching it, so I didn't realize it.
Oh, wow, he's a jerk.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very disappointed. I think that what people are trying to convey over and over to you is, do not put this only to what the council's going to discuss and decide. People are expressing a concern that they would like to see this on a referendum, that you are really listening and that you're going to listen to what the people want, which is what I've heard is that they don't want this concept. I am about controlled growth. I am about beautification. I too want to see a beautiful Home Depot area. I have a problem with it. But I feel that it's rushed, and for you to say now that that workshop is going to go on, and you guys are going to decide, negates everything we did here.
You're not listening. You're not listening. You're not listening. The council's going to meet and it's going to decide what to do. I don't know what the answer is. The council could say modify it to exactly what you want. The council could say trash it altogether and stop. The council could say trash it altogether and stop. But the council needs to meet and decide what to do.
But everybody here is telling you to stop. So if you could take that into consideration, that everyone is telling you not to do it.
That's not a decision-making meeting. That is to get, to figure out what would go in draft plan. The decision-making meetings would be later on in the process. That's what we need to discuss in the council. We have to figure out what to do next. We may say, look, I heard what I heard. I think that 4 stories is the option we need to go with. Let's put that in the plan and go back out and see what they think. There's not going to be a vote on Monday. It's just the council getting together and deliberating.
Everybody knows that, and I'm going to add a comment, and I mean this with all due respect. We live in a very diverse community with extremely well-educated people, and it always feels when you're trying to explain it, and I'm sorry, Yossi, as well, when you're trying to explain it, don't talk down to us. We get it. We know how to do basic math. We just do. So for someone to come up and say, we can talk about zoning, but it's so complex, is an insult to my intelligence. Residents are asking, what if they go ahead and push this through anyway? Well, then there's a petition process. And we can have a petition process to figure out how we're going to reverse whatever ordinances you're gonna put on through a referendum process. That can happen. Okay, so please take that into account. But the minute you change these rules and the developer comes in with an application, now we're stuck in its binding. And now we're looking for a problem. So please, table this, put it on hold, do not make a decision for first reading in February, please.
We will take that into consideration.
I have 4 things. The first one is, where is the space for the sidewalk, 8 to 10 feet, that is going to be going down US1 going to be coming from?
Where is the space from the sidewalk going to be coming from?
Yep.
So the sidewalks adjacent to US1 are 4 to 5 feet in width, and to get additional width, there's not sufficient room within the right of way right now, so the additional width, 4 to 5 feet, is recommended. Will operate the 10-foot sidewalk will come from easements that would be granted by property owners as the property is redeveloped. Easements on private property. So currently sidewalks are 4 to 5 feet within the right-of-way of Pinecrest Parkway. In order to achieve an 8 to 10-foot width, we would have to get that width through easements that would be granted by private property owners as those properties are developed. Easements, public easements on private property immediately adjacent to the public sidewalk that's currently in the right-of-way.
That is preposterous. Start with the gas stations on 104th. How are they going to get that easement and cars are still going to be flowing the right way in there? Absolutely unreasonable. What I see is you taking more space out of US1 and aggravating US1 even more, so more cars are going through our streets in Pinecrest.
No, the space wouldn't come off US1. It would come off of the land.
Right. Like I don't drive down US1 and I see the space that's available. Just go to 104th, one of your favorite sites for this project, and look at the gas stations. How are you going to take that space from those 2 gas stations that are there on 104th? And the cars still be able to make their round. It's hard enough to make your way around as it is. That's reality. Okay, that's point number 1. Next. US1, 104th, my favorite corner. Improvement. Oh, now you're coming north, south to north on US1. On 104th, you have this very long line, so you can make a left on 104th, get the shortcut to Palmetto. Why? Because none of you live on that street. None of you live on 73rd Court. None of you live on 100th Street. I know where you live.
She does.
She doesn't live where people travel, on the other streets. I have not heard how the additional need for schools is going to be addressed. Your answer is not an answer. Your answer is what's supposed to happen in this developer. What developer? They're developing on a couple of acres. None of the developers are going to be doing anything about building a school. So are the schools going to be Gulliver will go, who is supposed to Gulliver? How would you like it if that was 4 stories? Who lives next to Pinecrest Elementary? How would you like that in 4 stories? The council fought really hard against the development of this property, of having parties here, doing all sorts of things here that could have brought money to this property because of what council members of the body did. What a coincidence. This is not a workshop. You didn't come here to listen to us. You came here to state your case, to try to convince us. I've heard you, and you sound like you're authentic, but the meeting's ending, I just don't feel like that anymore. But I live on 73rd Court on 102nd Street, and every development and everything that Pinecrest has done has affected me personally.
Everything.
Yes, it has. Lawnmowers, not like they're gas, they're forbidden. But the, whatever. But we are doing everything possible to increase traffic. Nothing's been done to alleviate. Soon we're gonna have that bridge on 87th Avenue, which just means even more traffic going through Pinecrest.
That's my idea.
Whatever, it's coming through our community.
What do you want us to do? Build a wall?
I'm not, that'd be awesome, but we can't do that. But we need to act to it. That's the reality. And if you don't live on one of these pieces of streets, maybe you don't care too much. You're going to really be on. But, you know, everybody should care. I understand that we need to do something. But I just see I know what happened on 102nd Street. I know how that started and what it ended up being.
What happened?
And I love all the neighbors there. Don't get me wrong.
What
The
happened?
traffic.
Oh.
Traffic does increase. You can't say that 3,200 people are not going to increase traffic. That they're not going to increase the amount of kids that are going to be in each classroom. Come on.
I never said that.
It's implied. It's implied when you're going to say that the county's going to take care of the schools.
But they are.
Pinecrest Elementary School is under control. We have to let people from outside the community in order to build.
Where are those
Okay,
kids?
guys, let's not debate. Let's not debate that anymore. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Those were my 4 points. I'm done.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much.
Hello, me again, Terry Burnett, 432 Southwest 83rd. I work for the schools. I've worked for the schools for 46 years in all sorts of capacities. Right now, I'm currently a science teacher at Palmer Middle School. The schools on this side of the highway, all schools in Dade County, all schools in the country have drop enrollment. Some as little as 10%, some as much as 20 to 30%. Why? Because some of the parents have opted to keep their children in other settings and not send them to the public school. That's an outcome of COVID, that's not going to last long. But one of the other incentives that have gone on in the state of Florida is school of choice. School of choice has come down so that Dade County has interpreted as more magnet schools, more options. So we have children in our schools, not because the school is necessarily under-enrolled, though it is now because of COVID, but because the kids have an option. Pinecrest kids go elsewhere, our kids elsewhere come here. But having said that, we only have about 20% of students in our school that come from somewhere else. That means 80% are Pinecrest kids, or whatever the school system has determined is a feeder pattern. Palmetto runs into other municipalities. The school system does not belong to schools or given municipality. They have their own borders. So that's number one. Number two, we keep talking about transportation. I pulled the ridership technical report. I called my friends in the county, and they told me how to do this. I didn't print the whole thing off 300 pages. I took some salient parts. One of the things that I printed was, and I picked them up, the month of November. Why November? Because that's when ridership goes up. People are holiday shopping, they're out more, they're festive. So I picked up, and again, the last 2 COVID years, trusted drop. I'm not going to count that. That's not really a good indication of what's going on here. But if you look, this report goes from 2017 to 2019. In those 3 years, ridership dropped. Why is it dropping? Because even though, and I wrote this up too, from the corner of where the University of Miami is, all the way down to what would be, I guess, what's left of Southern Mall, all of that in the last 30 years has increased 40% density. Has not caused any more ridership on any of the corridors. I wish it did, but it didn't. Why? Because it doesn't go anywhere. It goes to downtown Miami, maybe to the airport. If you're on a flight past midnight, it doesn't go anywhere. So the truth of the matter is, till it goes to heavy use areas like FIU, Miami Beach, so they have more diversity, it goes out to West Kendall, ridership is gonna be low, and what we do in the corner is gonna make a big difference. The report you keep citing is the report from DOT that sends it down, because that's the average. When you increase transportation, density, you do increase ridership. But the average does not apply to Metro Rail, because Boston and Miami are more or less the same size. We have 25 miles of Metro Rail. Boston has 68 miles of rail. Until we increase the service area, we're in trouble. Keep in mind that before COVID, and I read the report, the major push for Metro Rail expansion was from the north end to go all the way, I guess the Hard Rock Stadium, I don't know if it ain't called the stadium anymore, but it was a big push. And because of that, they were going to come in cahoots with Broward County and send it into Broward County. That was a big plan. They had meetings. Again, I don't know what it is. I couldn't find any paper that has anything more than plans. Given that they put all that effort into that multi-billion-dollar expansion, I don't think they're worried about this little corridor in Pinecrest. And I didn't find one single one of these reports any mention at any time of enforcement of a plan that was originally really put on books in the 1990s. Okay, well, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And I see it, and I see these people here, and I get this sense that everybody wants to do the right thing. I'm going to say this, I'm an architect, I've been practicing for 35 years. My name is John Medina, I've lived in Pinecrest for the last 10 years. I want to start with just letting you know that I don't agree with you. And I'm going to tell you why, but before I get there, I wanted to bring up certain salient points. Certain salient points of why I think this may not be going the way you want. Because I sense that you really actually need to create a land use plan that there can be enough people agreeing on, and that compromise of growth is an acceptable growth pattern, because as an architect, most society eventually grow. The objective is that it's a growth pattern that is an improvement, not a change, but an improvement. The first point that I want to make is that having been said no to so many times in trying to get something beautiful built, all right? Probably for every yes, it's taken 7 no's. But it's a consensus building process. And I hear a lot more no's than just 7. Sure. And so I would tell you that all of these people here in Pinecrest are kind of like the Coral Gables folks. And I lived in Coral Gables for about 20 years. And I saw the last change, and I was involved in the last change of the Land Use Comprehensive Plan, having been a faculty member of the School of Architecture at the University of Miami. And I saw how that process happened. And I think a lot of people wait, from what I can tell, but they just disagree with you. But they're not relatives. They may not say it in the most thoughtful way. And I think that you guys are thoughtful. I'm just going to tell you that. You've done some great things in the last 10 years that I've had to sit back and I've had to say, that's very nice. It's very sensitive. But I think that in this case, sometimes you're answering questions because you're not giving an example of planned community development that you can point to and say, okay, in this presentation, if you would say visual corridors, the ratio of street to height is 1 to 1 or 1 to 3, and that's calculable, and this is what the angle of the wedding cake is going to look like, I think that would help you along. I think that if you said, listen, this is the FAR that we have, This is how it's going to increase. And we're not going to ban development. We want good development. You can't legislate good design. You can't legislate. Trust me, I know a lot of the guys that design out there.
Right.
And, you know, you have to ask them questions. So, we talked about height, but let me remind you that, and I want to say this to the billboard sits in an incredibly beautiful setting amongst residential buildings, but the architecture is stunning. So I think that you can have height, but you have to incentivize for the height to happen in a way that we can appreciate the beauty that you're at. Examples of planned communities that I have to say, wow, look at West, look at Fort Lauderdale, and how they've managed some of the growth in Fort Lauderdale. And they're actually doing a project on one of the islands that it didn't go over 4 stories. It didn't go over 4 stories, but there were also a number of responsibilities that designers had to take into account, like fenestration. As a municipality, I think that you can have, when you get the zoning and planning, you can establish obligations as to FAR, setback criteria, visual corridors.
Would you put those, where would they go? Would they go in the zoning code or the comp plan? Where would you put them?
I think that it's no criticism that I'm just going to say, that maybe it was now that we would have started talking about it and showing the good and the bad, including when Coral Gables 30, I've been practicing for a while. I pretend that I haven't.
You look great.
I'm saying. My wife,
She looks great.
But Coral Gables, before the last land use, they created to incentivize typologies of buildings.
Right.
That were traditional buildings that you could point to and say, if you do this and you give me finials on the top of your building and you create ventilation, I'm going to give you a percentage that you can do.
So you're talking about like what height bonuses or
There should be bonuses as long as you have the skyline of the building and how you fashion it to look like a building from the era of Georgian era.
But that's like your personal style. We can pick an architect. Right now,
This is West Palm Beach. If you would have shown me 4 patterns today of West Palm Beach, I'm not saying I love it or I hate it, but West Palm, Fort Lauderdale. I said, look, this is what's kept this beautification process. And mind you, Weston is a new city. So they got to start with a clean slate. Now we have an advantage here. We have an opportunity. We've seen what didn't work, right? And I'm going to tell you that I'm not keen on you giving me a really bad example of a piece of architecture that, oh look, it improved by something that's different, but I still don't think it's very good architecture. But it's a hell of a lot better than that ugly thing over here. If you're going to do that, then why don't you tell me about all of the great architects that have done 3 or 4 story buildings and say, well, this is what we want it to be. And so we're going to incentivize developers to make it be that by giving them opportunities and not potentially making as much money as they could be making. Because of what I've heard here today has more to do with appearance and aesthetic than possibly the 25 units per density ratio of an acre. And there are guys that visualize this stuff, because this audience here is visual. They know what they like. Mid-century architecture, this tropical modern that has the houses peer out of this canopy, this rich, mature canopy. That sounds like a village. And when people say you're making this radical change to the appearance of what just happened in front of the city, the Coral Gables along the corridor, that urban you would look down and it was low key, and you looked over and you say, well, this is kind of nice, I like the movement, right? And now you got a box 10 of buildings that are coming down. So it gets me to the point of the moment you sell those 3 points on that map, the 60,000 that some lady said over there, you can bet your bottom dollar that someone's going to say, I want it. I want to do something, why can't I not do it? And there's going to be a war. The other aspect they're going to tell you is, look, fear doesn't sell. Fear doesn't sell. Don't tell me the county's a big guy. You know what? I've been brought, every time I've tried to beautify or make something better, I get the fear factor. It's going to take you forever. I'm not going to let you do it. And guess what? It eventually does. I remember, some of you know the 5th Street Bridge, I designed that bridge. The reason why I was designing it, as an architect is that the county, the municipality, and the Department of Transportation realized how ugly the bridges were turning out. And I could tell you why, but I'm not going to say this. I might offend some of my colleagues that do the hard part, the calculations and stuff. So they asked me to do it. I had to get 3 communities to come together, the mayor of the city, which is many years, to agree that they liked the bridge so that they could fight the Department of Transportation. And the Department of Transportation is a pretty big guy. And at the end of the day, there was consensus. The bridge got built. I drive over and I'm kind of glad it doesn't look like what it could have been. And I think to myself, you gain consensus by teaching people how to get there. Right. All right? And what I'd like to try to see you do is, okay, look, provide the setback criteria. The architect said, one of the first architects said, listen, the setback criteria matters. But you got to do it in a way so that someone later doesn't say, hey, your setbacks have created a hardship, and therefore you have to give you relief. Right? Establish all of the criteria that is kind of clear for these people to see it. And you're probably going to limit your buildings to 4 stories just because no one can be that inventive and creative to go to 8.
What about, and again, like I said earlier, 8 was a placeholder for the conversation.
The city of Coral Gables has restrictions like 160 feet.
Yeah, but like I said, we're not 160. So my question is, am I off base by thinking that a little bit of height to give flexibility is a good, would prosper the development?
I think you could do, there's multiple steps you could incorporate.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you what the factors are that you can limit growth in a way that you want to control. Someone said landscape. Make the landscape islands bigger. The landscape criteria, look at what's happened to the city of Miami Beach. City of Miami Beach, 30, 40 years ago, you wouldn't go after a certain time of day over to South Point. Like new, right? But what the city of Miami Beach did, they create sufficient controls through landscape, through zoning, through adjacency criteria. The whole issue of the neighborhood behind that adjacency and what it does to the backside of the city. Okay, so they establish controls that you can lock things down to what you were hoping to do. And then provide incentives by creating, and by the way, the word typology means in history, the greatest pieces of architecture are oftentimes used as case studies for you lawyers. They're used as case studies to create skylines so that when you look at a building like a billboard, you can point out who was the original guy that thought of that technology, that form, that mass and the geometry. So you can create that, have that, and instead of just looking for, another developer building a building, how about another developer building a really good building? And I think that quality kind of matters in regards to what that urban corridor is, and you can get visionaries to look at it that are, quite frankly, they're looking at what our urbanism is going to become, as part of, to assist you. So there are people like Liz Platter-Zyberg who that group of people have spent a lifetime looking at what the urban corridor is. That thing about the cars that are so unattractive. Look, Liz is a great advocate to great urban avenues and streets. Victor Dover, he creates the illustrations to visualize what it would be. This is your street now, this is your street later. If you would have had that type of visual aid here today, I think that people would say, wow, that's an extraordinary improvement. By the way, those are things that have been done for these other cities. But if you look at how well, especially that Miami Beach was established, how well they've been able to sort of transform it, take it to another place. And I think that we have an opportunity. There's a number of buildings that are dilapidated you can improve on. And I think that if you provide an incentive, people will say, hey, you know what, I want to do something like that. It's going to be more valuable in the future. And one more check and balance. People are saying, no, because of referendum and so forth. I don't know if the referendum is the right thing. But I think you could also establish, if appearance matters so much to you, the board of, there's a board of architects at the city of Miami. There's a board of architects in some of these cities in Fort Lauderdale, Coral Gables. Have a board that can assist the designer and have 3 or 4 people sit on the board. Listen, some people have the eye, and some people just don't see it, right? So have a board that sits and reviews some of these projects that are going to
at the time of the application.
At the time of the application, so it becomes another check and balance.
Right. I think that's a good idea. Thanks a lot. That's great advice. Thank you for that. Great education.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time. I'm Peter England with the Economic Development Council of South Miami-Dade, 7620 Southwest 171st Street, Palmetto Bay. Not a resident of Pinecrest, but close. I'm here really to talk about the fact that we, the Economic Development Council, work with 5 cities all the way down this US1 corridor, all of whom have been affected by this county initiative for this rapid transit zone. We have taken a position against this county initiative. Nonetheless, the county is the county. I applaud the village of Pinecrest because I think there's a recognition on the part of your village that just saying no is not going to be a satisfactory answer, or is it going to make the county hold its tent and go away. I think the initiative to try to increase some level of density along US1 as a response to what the county is proposing makes a great deal of sense. You're here tonight, and I applaud you all for being here. Applaud yourself. You took time off your schedule to care. I will tell you that if there wasn't a village of Pinecrest, and this regional transit zone was coming down US1, you wouldn't be having a workshop like you're having tonight. You wouldn't be having the opportunity to make your opinion known to your village, because it is your village. For those of you that were engaged in actually forming the village in the first place, my hat's off to you, because it was lonely out there. I know what that's like. But you did it. You got incorporated. You got a village here. You are taking care of what you want your village to be. This RTZ is scary because the width of that zone goes into residential areas in many of these cities going down US1. But right now, Pinecrest is the only one of these municipalities that's actually said, look, we need to come up with a counter proposal. I've got 4 other cities that need to get their act together and do what you're doing here. So I applaud the mayor, I applaud the council, I applaud all of you for being here tonight because you cared enough to show up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. That's great.
So I'm just
here, didn't really plan on talking, but I'm trying to wrap my head around a few things. You had said that a while back that the zoning laws didn't catch up, that they were building these monstrosities and that the zoning had to be changed. And now I'm looking at, fast forward to today, and you want to build an 8-story monstrosity in my backyard. That it doesn't make sense. And it's like, you're taking it for developers and you're saying we're going to lax our zoning and make you where you can build it higher. But our single family people, no, you can't. I call them mini mansions, you call them monstrosities. The other thing is the lady that was here was talking about House 4, Pinecrest. I had 6 kids, I raised 6 kids. My family's lived here 100 years in Pinecrest. So my 6 kids went to the Palmetto schools. Your commuter bus, my youngest one wouldn't take it because she had to sit on the floor. It's so full. The other thing is, with this school, I forgot where I was going with this. But anyways, say it again? Yeah, I lost track.
Where are you going? I'll say it.
Yeah, go to somebody else and come back to me.
James, welcome. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your time, council, everybody here. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of time on your day. Thank you. I know a lot of work went into this, and it's extremely well articulated. I appreciate the thought process and obviously the concern for Pinecrest and the imminent issues related to the county. Just actually a few questions on my part.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. So 4 stories is a real issue. I understand you're talking about the flexibility, kind of building a range there. But if 4 stories was something that had sort of a larger, broader consensus across the community, would that be something that could be developed?
Yes, I think so. I think I think that we have 4 stories now. I would have at the end of the last workshop in November, or whatever it was before the holidays, I walked out of the room thinking, this is easy. I don't really envision going over 4 stories. Clearly, it could be done. And then somebody said, well, I haven't heard from any of the development community yet. So I took it upon myself to go meet with them. Some guy said, I think 25 stories, and I went, well, that's never going to happen in Pinecrest. And so what the conscientious folks that I met with said, well, to really make this work in a mixed-use thing, I need some flexibility, right? I learned that there was a break point in building financing somehow at about 8 or 10 stories. And clearly, in my mind, well, if there's a break point, if you get to 8, then the next level you're going to do is 12, or if you get to 10, the next level you're going to do is 14. We don't want to be above that level. So for conversation's sake, I said in my head, let's set the number at 8 or 10. I was pushing for 10 in the council, in the workshop. And it wasn't popular because I'm not too much anymore. I understood what the body language was with people around me. It wasn't, but they went along with me for a conversation's sake, and that's why we're here. So I learned that I think that getting a couple stories of flexibility would be a positive, 5 or 6, I think would be a benefit. But again, if we didn't, and like I said, I'm willing to, as always, this council's been willing to modify its opinion and plans to do the best thing possible at the time. Right? And if, I think we'll all put in our heads, look, I've listened to this, that the aggravation seems to be the height. And I understand it. I've lived here since incorporation, and I've gone through the battles of height. But I wanted us to explore height in a little bit more detail. I personally, I understand the battles of height, but I don't think 5 or 6 placed correctly on a site, or placed correctly in the elbow where the expressway ramp comes around, is going to have the height in and of itself is not going to have a detrimental effect. So that's the conversation I wanted to have, and the council will get together on Monday and digest this and figure out where to go. But by no means do I think that we are set necessarily on anything. I mean, I know that 8's off the table. I don't think that the council, from my understanding of the body language in the room, I think they were very kind to humor me and go along with 8 as a placeholder, and they probably are kicking themselves and will kick me for putting them in that situation so that we get to sit here tonight. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Certainly, and then if you don't mind, just have a couple follow-ups.
don't keep going.
I appreciate it.
Like I said, we're here all week.
It seems like, thank you. But the second question is around, in sort of doing some horse trading, you mentioned compromise
multiple scopes of conversation. But is there any way to actually get a physically written statement or something with the county that could then say, we're going to work straight, we'll give you X if you promise not to infringe for X amount of years?
We're working on it. So we're working on behalf of these cities with Miami-Dade County and its multiple commissioners on doing something. And so again, last real piece of conversation that we had was, you guys got to do something and you can't go backwards, and we'll kind of leave you alone. And I know that something is going to get put up very shortly. It will be controversial. One thing I've learned from almost every county elected official I've talked to is, well, they have different opinions on it, right? Whether they should take the authority or not take the authority. The goal is the same. They all want rapid transit. And not just for South Dade, because we only have a handful of county commissioners, but countywide. And to do this, to get that, they need a plan like this. So they're going to do something. I mean, my intuition tells me they're going to do something. Now, each commissioner may want to control their own district, but each commissioner has also told me doing nothing is not an option. So that's a working process that could twist and turn at any time. We're watching on a daily basis. And when I know, you'll know, because we work with all the cities in Miami County. They're all focused on the same goal. None of them want their autonomy taken away, but I think many of the people understand the actual need that exists.
Okay, thank you. And then, as it relates, I heard a few people mention referendum, taking things to a vote. Is there anything in opposition to that strategy, or is it, I mean, I'm just curious, because it seems like there's other things that have gone to referendum that actually affect a smaller number of residents overall?
Well, typically, referendums involve large expenditure of money, like the general obligation bond or something, where you're required to. So the way we try to practice in Pinecrest is through relative consistency. And so what we're doing now is a planning process, and then we have a zone land development code change, which is an ordinance, and a comprehensive plan change, which is also an ordinance. And those things, ordinances don't typically go to referendum. And so I wouldn't take an ordinance to referendum. A general obligation bond or an issue or something like that, we have gone to referendum for that. So it's just not typical, and so I would say be consistent so we don't create chaos. Because I don't think the voters are going to want to go every time the city says, hey, I want to ban plastic straws, referendum on plastic straws. I want to say not as much astroturf in the front yard, referendum. I don't think the voters want to have to go to a referendum every time. But I think we'll work something out here that is accommodating of the vast majority of people, because in Pinecrest we never fail to do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Just curious to, like you said, does it affect a good bit of people, or at least potentially this could affect?
Well, every ordinance affects everybody in Pinecrest, right? And so this is another ordinance, so we pass ordinances all the time. And we also repeal ordinances all the time and modify them. We're not as afraid to say that something has worked great and we double down on it, or hasn't worked and we'll take care of it, like the big box thing that we talked about before. So again, I'm convinced on this subject after remember, we have to have a specific plan to talk about before tonight, right? Everything we talked about in the fall was conceptual. So not until tonight did we actually have plan last week review. I'm convinced we'll come up with something that is workable and satisfies the vast majority of people. And if not, we won't do it because we don't want to make unintended consequences. The fact of the matter is that we have to have these community conversations. And I know they're unpleasant because change is difficult. But this village of Pinecrest and this council has never necessarily been heavy-handed. We're always negotiating, dealing with very tough things all the time, and we're coming to the middle ground. And we'll continue to focus on that and do it. I'm confident we'll be able to do it here.
Certainly, and then 2.0, I think someone may have addressed also was, if the plan was something that people didn't like, they can easily take up their own signature process, so to speak, and if they want to do that, we'll get that.
Yeah, what's funny, James, is that having done this since 2006, right, I realized that there's 18,000 people in the village, and not one time, not all 18,000 like what we've done. right? So what we've learned is that listening is critical. And so, I've gotten into the habit of giving my telephone number out in the newspaper. Maria calls, we go to coffee, we talk, we chat. We don't always agree with one another, but ultimately, it's time to make a decision and the council's got to vote. And just by necessity, some people get what they want and some people don't get what they want. My history has been here since we've been doing it, and somebody mentioned the sidewalk, it took 10 years. Ken mentioned the sidewalk that took 10 years to build, or Jim, that people walk away from the process feeling heard and respected. And that's our goal, right? And you know what? Is a sidewalk going to ruin your property values? Probably not. Is it going to raise them a whole lot? Probably not. But these are the things that we're faced making decisions with. So I understand the controversy of this issue because we've been dealing with it since incorporation. And so, again, we're going to be patient, we're going to listen. I'll still give you my phone number, I'll still take all of your calls. I gotta say, man, I've got some of the nastiest emails that I've ever gotten have come as a gen. I'm a big boy, I can understand. I just kind of look and say, really? I saw you in Publix the other day, now you told me I can't even bend that far to do that. It's not physically possible. So, I would like the tone of the conversation to be a little bit more collegiate.
Certainly, no, and definitely appreciate that. Was just curious about that avenue, if that was something that people wanted to pursue in a orderly manner.
Yeah, let's get there first. I don't think there's going to be any need for it. I think we're all going to be either relatively happy or relatively unhappy, but I don't think we're going to have a large amount of people that are dancing in the streets nor we're going to have people crying in their beer. I mean, this is going to, maybe it's one of these things that makes everybody happy or makes everybody happy, but it's not going to bore anybody's ox one way or the other.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, Jose. What's up?
I am Jose Casanova, resident of 8325 Southwest 132nd Street, in the city for over 30 years. I am an architect and an urban planner with over 40 years of experience. And I congratulate you, Mayor, and the member, the council member, and the staff for the wonderful presentation. Very informative, and also for your patience.
Yes.
I have been in many meetings like this, and you need to have a lot of patience. I'm not going to start looking into the big picture. And it's basically that we cannot live in isolation. We live in a metropolitan area called Miami-Dade County with almost 3 million people, and we have commissioners that need to respond to the needs of this community. We have a very serious transportation problems in Miami that are affecting the quality of life of people and economic development. And we need to look for solutions. And the solution, or part of the solution, is transit, including metro rail. I have been after the country the last 15 years to say, well, where are we going to extend metro rail to Homestead? And the answer is the same, we don't have the densities. So in order for transit to be efficient and effective and feasible, you need high densities. 125, 150, 200, and even more in some areas. So this is what the country is trying to do now. I don't see a problem with 125 units per acre around the area. I don't have a problem with 8 to 10-story buildings.
You are a brave man. After sitting through this whole presentation, you're a brave man.
And I have experience dealing with density. I have participated in meetings like very similar to this one. People are screaming because they don't want to have increased densities. That was many years ago. Right now, the same areas have 20 and 30-story towers. And unfortunately, sometimes we cannot stop development. We have to be reasonable with what we can expect. We need to put enough protection to the city, and I think that this is part of your responsibility. I think that urban design guidelines and standards, the creation of the review board is important. I participated in both doing urban design guidelines and standards and organizing the review board, and it worked. And you have anything, I think that we can have a beautiful community in the future, and I foresee area, transforming, because it's going to change. And what I see here today, people with their own fears of change. And we have to understand that we almost had a nice moment. We have to understand that Pinecrest is going to change, whether we like it or not. Because I go to okay, I have the right to think the way that I do. And I am trained by a city planner. Okay, and I have been doing research on transit safety for the last 30 years in many cities in the US, Canada, and Europe. So I am not new to this. And I strongly believe that the need for higher density along the station, and I think that you need to have it too. I don't know if the 80-story building or the 40 or 60 unit rate will work with the county when they are asking for 125. I think that the county might want something higher than that we're talking here. That is my opinion, because the county needs higher density to solve the problem of traffic. We cannot survive with traffic. Population is going to increase, and if we don't bring solutions to traffic, it's going to be worse than we have now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, I didn't want to talk when I came here though. So, part of it is you're very restrictive on the single-family units and the homeowners that live here. And now we're trying to reverse that for development to go higher.
So the interesting part of it is we want to be very restrictive on those. We just want to be restrictive in a different way. We'll be very
Right, linear zoning law so they can build higher. Got it. Monstrosity in my eyes, not yours. But, so, again, I have 6 kids. If I want in Pinecrest, and they talked about being a house poor. If I say, okay, my 3 boys want to move back with their girlfriends, we're not related. Guess what? In Pinecrest, you can't have more than 3 unrelated people in the house, so they can't do that. They can't come back to help me. More restricted on me, a single-family house poor person. So a lot of people have touched on things here that I wanted to talk about, which was the schools, the landscaping. Landscaping, you're talking about multi-levels. Let's landscape the roofs and kind of block it. I hate this type of palm, but it actually looks pretty good right here. You talked about Pinecrest having these canopies and expansive green spaces, and you want to keep to that theme. How in an 8-foot space between the road and sidewalk and the building? You're not going to do it. Oak trees, we have large oak trees, banyan trees. They have large canopies. How are you going to fit that into this 8-story monstrosity? The other thing is, we're all jumping on the bandwagon for development, and because people are going to take the metro rail to go to work. Why don't we think outside of the box and say, let them come to Pinecrest to work? Because you know what? After work, they go home. And we're not going to have the traffic of the weekends and the whatever. You said it's the office buildings, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, not a problem. So think outside the box. Bring jobs to Pinecrest. Let them work along the US1. Where are they going to go? We're talking about they're going to jobs. Where are they going? These extra, you're bringing in almost 4,000 people. Have we talked about adding to the police force? So you're not listening. Are we talking about adding to the police force? Because they're going to be...
If I wasn't listening, I would have just ignored the statement and all that, but acknowledge I didn't hear you,
So are we adding...
Every time we scan, we obviously look at the population, and every year we see more or less officers. We do that for every year.
So how many are we going to need with these 4,000 people?
We haven't done that analysis.
Say it again?
We haven't done that analysis.
But we want the 4,000 people. But for the cost associated with it.
Yeah, but they pay taxes too. They don't come here for free.
Okay. Good point. Are we all going to pay for that? We're so overcrowded now. The commuter buses for the kids to get to school, they're sitting on the floor. It's like, oh yeah, my youngest one refused to ride it because she's sitting on the floor. Because there's so many people on it. It's
there's no ridership. Good thing. That means the buses drive. People ride.
They are, but you don't have enough. But then it costs more money. But anyways, my other thing is I want to address this city village manager, and I want to say thank you. I appreciate you asking the question of how high is acceptable. And to me, it's like you're willing to listen to us and hear us
and I appreciate that. And I've worked with you in the past, you've helped me resolve issues, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I know it's late.
No.
I know you're weary. I know your plans don't include me, but they have to, so I thank you.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So, I just wanted to say, I may be the last speaker, so I'll try to be brief.
There's a guy waiting behind it. We never run out of it.
Great. So, I know Ms. McNaughton talked earlier about being offended. I have some pretty thick skin, I think, but I felt a little offended tonight. I was offended by a lot of the innuendo that was thrown around about conspiracies, hidden agendas, folks suggesting maybe some or all of you are in the pocket of developers. I got some great advice from a mentor a long time ago, which it's not novel advice, but these days it sounds like it may be novel, which is always assume positive intent. And I think what I've heard tonight from you and the staff certainly was rooted in positive intent, trying to do what's best for this village. Jim McDonald talked about the fact that, there were 200 people here, and maybe, I don't know, roughly, and that's a great turnout. We have 18,000 people in the village. And some of us may not be the loudest, some of us may not be the rudest, but, we're here, and there's a lot of folks that I know personally that I have spoken to who are supportive of thoughtful, modest development done right. So I wanted to make that point. I also heard a lot of commentary tonight about, you as elected officials being, beholden to the voice of the people and having to do what the people want. I happen to have voted for each and every one of you. You mayor and every single council member on the council over the years, and including in the latest cycles. And I know for me, when I vote for an elected official, I vote for someone not who's going to be a puppet that is just going to parrot whatever I want them to say. What I vote for is someone who I believe will do the due diligence, listen to the facts, seek out the advice of experts, listen certainly to the community, but at the end of the day, put in the time and effort, and for you guys on an unpaid basis, to come to the right decision, like Jim McDonald said, do what's right and have good judgment. And I believe all of you are equipped with that. I think you have the capacity to, come to a good decision and exhibit that good judgment. So I've heard a lot of commentary tonight about pump the brakes, take it slow, let's take more time. I've participated in the online Inspire, I was in the in-person Inspire, I'm here tonight, I know there's been countless hours by staff and by the council, by yourself, Mr. Mayor, thinking about this issue. I don't think anybody's opinion is going to change. I think analysis paralysis is soon to take over, so I would encourage you just, take the mandate that you've been given by the people who elected you and make a sound decision. Move forward.
Thank you very much. That's our charge. I'm sorry. How are you?
Doing well.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
James Mahone, 6350 Southwest 120th Street. I've already got a letter and email that was sent to the council that's on record.
Yes, sir.
I'm opposed to anything up to 4 stories. Okay? If you
Yes.
want to go 8, I'll go -2. Okay?
Yeah, underground.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
We could. I'm concerned about my representation in the city. The majority of the land mass in Pinecrest is half-acre or acre larger lots. When we start putting high density in, we're getting biggest geographical areas getting less say-so. Our votes, our opinions are being diluted. I'm very concerned about that.
So you're scared of other people coming in and...
They're going to have a different agenda than what single-family estate owners. Because it's the way I feel.
No, I'm just wondering why. I'm not criticizing, I'm just asking why. Because they're renters or...
Because they're going to be more interested in what's going on in their higher density community, their little areas, than what the
bigger picture of Pinecrest is interstate lines. That's the way I feel. Okay? I don't understand why you and council hasn't gotten together with cities further south and got a stronger coalition to oppose this.
We have.
I think more could have been done.
How do you know?
I don't know that. From what I've seen, it just seems like
when we all meet with the mayors and councils of all the cities, north and southwest, on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. We discuss the things that impact us on the US1 border, and we've gone in lockstep of battling this issue with Miami County. So we're doing, you couldn't do any more than we are doing. And, you know, it's a game, it's got to play out, right? And they've got to make the next move. Somebody's got to make a move. But we're on it all the time. We are aggressive, but we're also reasonable. Go ahead.
you keep comparing, or you brought up, because remember, I've listened to each one of these as far, and I listened to that entire 4-hour meeting that council had. You keep mentioning Cutler Bay and Homestead. We're not those cities. Drastically different. That doesn't help the cause.
What cause?
Trying to push this through on us. Higher density. They may need it. They may need rapid transit. Pinecrest. We're not going to be using the rapid transit system that was envisioned with all of this additional money. We're not using it now.
We're not using it now.
We're not.
We're not using it now.
And higher density is not going to increase miles.
Driving practice gives.
Okay, I appreciate your news. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Good point, sir.
You want to finish up?
Go ahead, Joe. Go, Joe.
Go, Joe.
Joe's been waiting a long time.
Okay, my name's Joe Beer, 7560 Southwest 135 Street, Pinecrest, Florida. I just want to mention the whole issue with Commissioner Gilbert, and when he threw out the draft presentation of the RTZ, and it has the buffer of 1 mile, going all the way to 82nd Avenue. And I've spoken before the Pinecrest Council about my concern of the 165 homes that are due east of this 136 commercial property. And the sensitivity that the council, in my opinion, should really take with regard to those homeowners and shadowing. So I'm pleasantly hearing tonight that you're coming off of 8 stories. This is the first time I've heard 8 stories out of your mouth, too. It's, it was 4 stories before, and I've been pretty content with that. The consistency in the Inspired sessions has been where the residents don't want the height, and they don't want the residential density. They don't want it.
Understood.
So, 4 stories is in the code. I chair a committee to the southwest, Palmetto Bay, neighborhood protection, and we proffered a height maximum to match yours. We followed you guys because it's a reasonable height for a residential bedroom community, and our council passed it down there. So we are in alignment with you. And if you look at the 165 homes I spoke of, there's no guarantee that the RTC still won't move forward after you upzone the commercial quarter. And once that toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't get it back in.
It won't matter because the density will be 125 units an acre. So 25 and 8 stories will be a pin.
Well, I'm just saying it's one session plus the other expires. You had 250 people here tonight. If you add that to the unanimous decisions of Palmetto Bay and potentially the opinions of Cutler Bay, which I'm not too up to speed on.
They want as much height.
But if we all got together and supported the unanimous vote against this RTZ, like the cities in the legal cities has done, I think there were 14 unanimous vote that they just didn't want to have the RTZ in its current form. So, it needs to be shut down because a lot of the municipalities, the incorporated ones like Pinecrest, already have the density to support BRT.
Pinecrest?
Yeah, it's already here. And Palmetto Bay too, you know. And by the way, the rendering of that station, that's not what it's going to look like. That beautiful honeycomb dome igloo, that's not what it's going to look like. You got to look at the real pictures of what they put out after those. Those are the preliminary, the early ones.
Those are on their website, so they.
Their website's wrong. It's not going to look like that.
So they're lying to us.
Mark my word, go look at it again. I'm just saying that the homes, you know, the Tuscany that's right across from the 136 triangle there, the Spectre property. There's 50 homes in there. There's another 75 homes just to the east of that. There's a lot of residential component and no one should be left behind. I spoke about that before. Please protect the residential component, the buffers, the height, the stepping is important. I heard that loud and clear tonight. Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate everybody coming out. Thank you. Have a good night.
Last time we spoke,
Which was 10 minutes ago.
on this issue in December, I think it was, the first workshop. No, I was going to say, look, I try to tell you, don't do this, it's going to get worse or ugly, right? If you follow the advice of ignoring the feedback and just rushing this through because of analysis paralysis, this is going to get even worse because people are going to get, you know, the awareness is going to grow on this. It's not going to go well. Just continue building consensus. The gentleman, the architect from UM, fantastic feedback. I think that was great. I think you've seen people that are open to not just completely against this. Some people are open to the change, like I told you. I think there is room to do something here in the board.
Okay, but as long as it's exactly what we want.
No.
Okay.
Listen, exactly.
Very little room for any compromise.
Listen, the original plan you shared with us was 4 stories. I was open to that.
But I told you why I modified that, and you don't
understand that, no? And you said, if you're not happy, if you don't get what you want, that's not true. You just asked me, what would be a good compromise? I'll say 5. You know, I'm not here opposed to this completely. But don't attack me just because I'm giving you what the answer you asked for, which was what would be a maximum that you think would be okay. That's my maximum.
And I appreciate that. I think we get somewhere. So I'll check it.
Okay, good. I commend you. I mean, taking the meeting, and I gotta say, it's been horrible, and I feel bad for you.
Was it that bad?
It is horrible. I swear to God, it feels horrible. No. I just think that I gotta commend you for sitting there for the 3+ hours. Listening, not listening, you know, doing the best you could. And it's like that. So
we're never gonna stop listening. So that's thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I know you have, you know, been able to gather all the information. Keep working on it. Bring it to us, and we're happy to keep working.
Thank you. I really do. Danny.
Hey.
You write the website on that.
Hello, Dave. My name is Daniel, and I 6462 Southwest 172. And I'm also European, so I have accent, so I think I'm not going to be offended if you call me out, but I think you will not. I have a question to the audience. Who lived here in Pinecrest more than 12 years? All of you are minority. The reason is because the rate of change in Pinecrest is every 12 years 50% of the population changes. I'm a tech and science and data guy, so that's really working for a statistical company. So just wanted to tell you that I have no idea about the property management and land development, how you do it, guys. But I know about data. Another thing is if we talk about, we just need simple math to understand what's happening in this community. It actually is not true, because if you want to do simple math, you have to write an API algorithm and actually pull all the 6,200 property and understand how those property price and value has changed. And it changed. In the last 2 years, we added $4.53 billion value to our property. Currently, the city got $15 billion property value by whole Pinecrest. That was never in Pinecrest history when we added that much value to Pinecrest property values. Everybody said before we do any changes is going to destroy property values. Never happened. But I have some constructive feedback too, because I think that we really felt that we don't, I think the people didn't understand the conditional use case there. Because I think people they say, oh, you're going to change it, just automatically it's going to happen, and you don't have control, and the people doesn't have a control. I think that's actually, it's missed from the whole discussion. People don't understand what is conditional use. You know, I understand, you understand charter, people who are sitting on the zoning board, they understand that. But most of the people don't understand that what is conditional use. The other piece I think is like, because we talk about like negotiating between 4, 5, 6, 8, whatever number is. I think we just don't understand what is the impact of it, because if you say, okay, 5 could be maybe okay, but we don't see it, we don't visualize it. And I think if you want to be kind of negotiation and discussion with them, I think it's the best way to actually show them to visualize it. So, and there's one thing I would like to add that we talk about that people saying, oh, I'm living in a tear-down house. I think nobody living in a tear-down house, this is part of our community. And if you believe that you live in a tear-down house, you are disrespecting Pinecrest how it is. It means you actually support development because you're telling me that if you live in a tear-down house, that tear-down house doesn't belong here. It's not part of the community. It's a mistake because it has to be changed. In my opinion, there's nothing to be changed. So I think we really would like to make sure that we realize that what is our character of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay. Don't go anywhere yet.
I started this, I'm going to finish it. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. All you people were wonderful. 4 hours here for us. Thank you. I think you deserve applause. But I will say one more thing before I go. About 10 years ago, I was with the Chamber of Commerce when we were pushing as part of Pinecrest preservation. You know, one of the things they told me that I've never forgotten, how often they showcase Pinecrest when they're trying to attract corporate America to Miami for corporate offices. And Pinecrest is the community they sell. And though change is inevitable, just look at the architecture, the truth of the matter is, change is not the same as alteration.